When my daughter told me she couldn't wait to live like a queen at my husband's will reading, I felt my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. Days later, I was standing in the wreckage of my ransacked bedroom. That's when I realized betrayal doesn't just break hearts, it burns down entire legacies. If you're watching this unfold, subscribe now and tell me in the comments if you've ever discovered someone wasn't who you thought they were. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. The lawyer's office smelled of old paper and polished wood, the kind of place where family legacies are cemented or shattered. I sat quietly in the corner, my hands folded, grief still heavy from the loss of my husband, Richard. My daughter, Victoria, swept in late, dressed in diamonds and silk, her lips curved into a cruel smirk that I pretended not to notice. As she dropped into her chair, she didn't wait for the formalities. "Finally," she said smugly, her voice cutting through the room, "I'll live like a queen." My heart twisted. This was my child, the little girl I once held in my arms, the one I raised with sleepless nights and endless sacrifice. And now, she wasn't grieving her father. She was celebrating her imagined fortune. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, coughed, adjusted his glasses, and then smiled. "Actually," he said slowly, "everything goes to her mother." The diamonds in her ears sparkled as her face drained of color. And then, before anyone could stop her, she fainted, dramatically, perfectly, as if she'd practiced it 1,000 times. "Victoria!" I rushed to her side, maternal instinct overriding the hurt that had burrowed into my chest. Her eyelids fluttered, mascara perfect despite the performance. Mr. Harrison sighed, clearly having seen this kind of theater before. "Perhaps some water?" As Victoria recovered, I returned to my seat, watching her transformation from shock to calculation. Her eyes narrowed, darting between me and the thick legal document on the desk. "There must be some mistake," she hissed, voice low and dangerous. "Daddy always said I was his princess. His heir." Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses again, a nervous habit, I realized. "Mrs. Montgomery, would you like me to continue with the reading?" I nodded, unable to find my voice. Richard had never mentioned changing his will. We'd always agreed that Victoria would inherit everything, the estate, the business, the family name. When had this changed? And why hadn't he told me? The estate of Richard Montgomery, in its entirety, the Westlake Manor property, all financial holdings, Montgomery Industries shares, and personal effects, is bequeathed to his wife, Eleanor Montgomery, to manage and distribute as she sees fit. Victoria's manicured nails dug into the leather armrests. "This is absurd. I'm his daughter, his blood. Mother has no idea how to run a business." I flinched. The words stung because there was truth in them. I'd been the society wife, the charity organizer, the silent partner. Richard had never involved me in the business, not because I couldn't understand, but because that was our arrangement. Old money, old ways. "There's more," Mr. Harrison continued, glancing nervously at Victoria. "A letter, addressed to both of you." He handed me a sealed envelope with Richard's distinctive handwriting. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. "My dearest Eleanor and Victoria, if you're reading this, I've left this world sooner than I'd hoped. There are things I never had the courage to say while living that I must say now. Eleanor, my love, you've been my strength for 30 years. You've seen the best in me when I couldn't see it myself. Forgive me for the secrets I've kept. They were meant to protect you, though I see now they may have done the opposite. Victoria, my daughter, you are my greatest joy and my deepest worry. I've watched you grow into a woman of remarkable beauty and intelligence, but I've failed you as a father. I gave you everything except the lessons you needed most: humility, gratitude, compassion. I've left everything to your mother not to punish you, Victoria, but to give you time. Time to become the woman I know you can be, rather than the entitled heiress I fear you've become. Eleanor will decide when, or if, you're ready for the responsibility of the Montgomery legacy. With eternal love and hope for both of you, Richard." Victoria snatched the letter from my hands before I finished reading it aloud. Her face contorted with rage as she scanned the words. Time? Time? She crumpled the letter in her fist. I'm 32 years old. I graduated summa cum laude from Wharton. I've worked at the company for 10 years. Her voice rose with each point, echoing against the mahogany walls. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. There's one additional clause that Mr. Montgomery was most insistent upon. He flipped to the last page. Any attempt to contest this will, or any legal action taken against Mrs. Montgomery regarding these arrangements, will result in immediate forfeiture of any future inheritance. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's chest heaved with barely contained fury, her knuckles white around the crumpled letter. I sat frozen, the weight of Richard's decision crushing me. He had placed an impossible burden on my shoulders, to judge our own daughter worthy or unworthy of her birthright. Mrs. Montgomery? Mr. Harrison's voice seemed to come from miles away. Do you have any questions? 1,000 questions swirled in my mind, but I could voice none of them. Instead, I simply shook my head. Victoria stood abruptly, the chair scraping against hardwood. This isn't over, she whispered, her voice low enough that only I could hear. Then she stormed out, the heavy door slamming behind her. Mr. Harrison began gathering his papers, avoiding my eyes. I'm sorry it was so difficult, Mrs. Montgomery. Richard was concerned about Victoria's spending habits and some of her recent business decisions. He felt this was the only way. What business decisions? I asked, finding my voice at last. Victoria's role at Montgomery Industries was largely ceremonial, wasn't it? Harrison's hesitation told me everything. I think that's a conversation you should have with the board of directors. As the majority shareholder now, they'll be expecting to meet with you soon. The drive home from the lawyer's office was a blur. The autumn leaves along the winding road to Westlake Manor seemed to mock me with their vibrant colors. How dare the world remain beautiful when everything I thought I knew had crumbled? Victoria's sports car was nowhere to be seen when I pulled into the circular driveway. Our family home, my home now, truly mine, loomed against the afternoon sky, its stone facade and Gothic towers a testament to 5 generations of Montgomery wealth. Mrs. Reynolds, our housekeeper of 20 years, met me at the door with worried eyes. Miss Victoria came and left in quite a state, ma'am. Took a suitcase. Said she'd be staying at her penthouse downtown. I nodded, relieved and heartbroken at once. Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. I think I'll rest before dinner. Of course, ma'am. She hesitated. And may I say, we're all very sorry about Mr. Montgomery. He was a good man. Was he? I wondered as I climbed the grand staircase. A good man who kept secrets from his wife? Who waited until death to confront his daughter's flaws? Who thrust me into a position I never wanted and wasn't prepared for? My bedroom, our bedroom, felt empty without Richard's presence. His reading glasses still sat on the nightstand. His robe still hung on the bathroom door. After 30 years together, his absence was a physical ache. I sank onto the edge of the bed, finally allowing myself to feel everything I'd suppressed in the lawyer's office. Grief for Richard, shock at his decision, fear of the responsibility he'd placed on me, and heartbreak over the daughter who seemed to care more about her inheritance than her father's death. Where had I gone wrong with Victoria? We'd given her everything, the best schools, exotic vacations, designer clothes, a starter position at the family company. Perhaps that was the problem. We'd given her everything except limits. The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. I checked the caller ID. Montgomery Industries. Eleanor Montgomery speaking. Mrs. Montgomery, this is James Wilson, CFO.
His voice was strained.
I'm sorry to disturb you during this difficult time, but there's a situation developing that requires your immediate attention. My stomach dropped. What kind of situation? I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. Could you come to the office tomorrow morning? 9 o'clock. Mr. Wilson, I'm not sure what Richard told you, but I have no experience running a multinational corporation. Surely the board. Mrs. Montgomery, he interrupted, something like fear in his voice. You are the board now. And there are things happening that Mr. Montgomery was investigating before his accident. Things that can't wait. Accident. The word hung in the air between us. Richard's car, wrapped around a tree on a clear night on a road he'd driven 1,000 times. No alcohol in his system. No mechanical failure. Just an inexplicable loss of control. "I'll be there," I said finally. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, haunted by questions. What had Richard discovered? What was Victoria's true role at the company? Why hadn't he trusted me enough to tell me what was happening? Around 3 in the morning, I heard it, the faint sound of breaking glass from downstairs. I froze, listening. Another crash, followed by the muffled sound of drawers opening and closing. Someone was in the house. Heart pounding, I reached for my phone, ready to call 911. Then I heard a familiar voice cursing loudly after another crash. "Victoria." I pulled on my robe and crept downstairs, following the sounds to Richard's study. The door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the hallway. I peered through the gap. My daughter was tearing the room apart, methodically and thoroughly. She'd pulled books from shelves, emptied drawers onto the floor, and was now attempting to pry open a small wall safe hidden behind a painting of her grandfather. "Victoria," I said quietly, pushing the door open. "What are you doing?" She whirled around, eyes wild, hair disheveled, so unlike her usual polished appearance. For a moment, she looked like the frightened little girl who used to crawl into our bed during thunderstorms. Then her expression hardened. "Where is it?" she demanded. "Where's Daddy's real will?" "That was his real will, Victoria," Mr. Harrison confirmed. "Harrison is a liar," she spat. "Daddy would never do this to me. Never." Her voice broke on the last word, and for a moment, I saw genuine grief beneath her anger. There has to be another will. Or a trust. Something. I stepped carefully into the room, mindful of the scattered papers and broken glass. "Why don't we talk about this in the morning? When we're both calmer? Don't patronize me, Mother." She turned back to the safe, fingers working frantically at the dial. "I know the combination. It's my birthday. It's always been my birthday. Victoria, please." The safe clicked open. Victoria's triumphant expression quickly turned to confusion as she pulled out the contents, a single USB drive and a handwritten note. Before I could stop her, she read the note aloud. "Victoria, if you're breaking into my safe, you've proven my point. The answers you seek are on this drive, but they may not be the ones you want. Dad." Our eyes met across the destroyed study. For a moment, I saw something like fear flicker across her face. Then she pocketed both the note and the drive. "Victoria, that belongs to both of us," I said, holding out my hand. She laughed, a brittle sound. "Both of us? According to Daddy's precious will, everything belongs to you now. Everything except the truth, apparently." She gestured around the ruined study. "Enjoy cleaning up, Mother. It's just the beginning of the mess you've inherited." She pushed past me, but I caught her arm. "The board meeting tomorrow. Do you know what it's about?" Something dark crossed her face. "Worried already? You should be." She yanked her arm free. "You wanted to be queen of the castle? Congratulations. Your reign starts tomorrow." After she left, I stood in the wreckage of Richard's study, trying to make sense of it all. What was on that drive? What had Richard been investigating? And why did Victoria seem so afraid of what it might contain? I began to pick up the scattered papers, hoping to find some clue. Most were mundane, expense reports, meeting minutes, industry analyses. But one folder, partially hidden under the desk, caught my eye. The label read simply, Prometheus. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a list of dates and amounts. Large amounts. Millions transferred from Montgomery Industries accounts to something called Prometheus Holdings. At the bottom, in Richard's handwriting, "Follow the money. V involved. V Victoria." My hands trembled as I stared at the paper. Was Richard investigating our daughter? Was she involved in some kind of financial misconduct? I slipped the paper into my robe pocket, my mind racing. The board meeting tomorrow suddenly seemed much more ominous. Richard had left me everything, his fortune, his company, and apparently, his unfinished investigation. As I climbed the stairs back to my empty bedroom, a new thought struck me. What if Richard's accident hadn't been an accident at all? What if he had discovered something so damning that someone had wanted to silence him permanently? And what if that someone was our daughter? The Montgomery Industries headquarters dominated the downtown skyline, a gleaming tower of glass and steel with our family name emblazoned at the top. I'd attended charity galas and holiday parties here, but had never set foot in the executive boardroom on the top floor. As the elevator ascended, I struggled to calm my racing heart. I dressed the part, Chanel suit, pearls, hair perfectly coiffed, but inside, I felt like an imposter. What did I know about running a multinational corporation? What would these seasoned executives think when Richard's society wife showed up to take his place? The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area where a young woman sat behind a desk. She looked up, startled. "Mrs. Montgomery, we weren't expecting you for another hour." I checked my watch.
8:05 Uhr morgens.
I like to be early, I lied smoothly. In truth, I'd barely slept and had decided to come in early to prepare, maybe speak with James Wilson before the full board arrived. "Of course, ma'am. I'll let Mr. Wilson know you're here." She reached for her phone, then hesitated. "Actually, there's a board meeting already in progress." "Already in progress?" I frowned. I thought the meeting was at 9. "Yes, ma'am, the official meeting. This is..." She lowered her voice, looking uncomfortable. "This is a special session called by Ms. Victoria late last night." Ice flooded my veins. "I see. And where is this special session taking place?" "The main boardroom, ma'am." "Thank you. I'll find my way." I moved past her desk, following the sound of voices down the hallway. The boardroom doors were closed, but I could hear my daughter's voice clearly, confident and commanding. "Emergency measure, given the circumstances. My mother is a wonderful woman, but she has no business experience whatsoever. The power of attorney document simply ensures the company's stability during this transition period." My hand froze on the door handle. Power of attorney? Victoria was trying to wrest control before I even began. I pushed the door open. The conversation stopped abruptly. Around the massive table sat 12 men and women in expensive suits, all staring at me with expressions ranging from surprise to embarrassment. At the head of the table, Richard's seat, stood Victoria, a document in her hand. "Mother," she said, recovering quickly. "We weren't expecting you yet, clearly." I stepped into the room, closing the door behind me. "Please, don't let me interrupt. You were explaining how my lack of business experience necessitates an emergency power of attorney. To whom, exactly?" Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "To the board, temporarily. Just until we can arrange proper leadership training for you." How thoughtful. I moved to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table. And this emergency meeting that I wasn't invited to, was it called with proper notice to all board members? A silver-haired man to my right cleared his throat. "Mrs. Montgomery, I'm Charles Bartlett, lead counsel. This isn't an official board meeting." Ms. Victoria suggested an informal discussion about the transition. An informal discussion that involves legal documents removing my control of the company my husband explicitly left to me? I raised an eyebrow. "That seems quite formal, Mr. Bartlett." Victoria's composure slipped for just a moment. "Mother, you're embarrassing yourself. You don't understand." "What I understand," I interrupted, surprising myself with my steady voice, "is that my husband's will was clear. I am the majority shareholder of Montgomery Industries. I am the head of this board. And any attempts to circumvent that will not only be unsuccessful, but may constitute corporate malfeasance." The room fell silent. I had their attention now. "I may not have an MBA," I continued, "but I've been married to Richard Montgomery for 30 years. I've hosted the dinners where deals were made. I've listened to his concerns, his strategies, his vision for this company. And most importantly, I was the one he trusted with his legacy." I turned to face Victoria directly. "Now, perhaps someone can explain to me what Prometheus is and why millions of dollars have been funneled there without proper board oversight?" The reaction was immediate. Several board members exchanged alarmed glances. James Wilson, seated to Victoria's left, went pale. And Victoria, my daughter, my only child, looked at me with such naked hatred that it took my breath away. "I suggest we adjourn this unofficial meeting," I said into the tense silence. "The official board meeting will begin at 9, as scheduled. I expect full financial records and a complete briefing on all current projects and concerns." I stood, smoothing my skirt, including Prometheus. As the board members filed out, murmuring among themselves, Victoria remained frozen at the head of the table. When we were alone, she finally spoke. "You have no idea what you're doing," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You're going to destroy everything Daddy built." "I'm trying to protect what your father built," I countered. "Victoria, what is Prometheus? Why was your father investigating it? And why does he think you're involved?" Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, perhaps? "You found his notes." "Some of them. Not enough. Help me understand, Victoria. Whatever this is, we can fix it together." For a moment, she seemed to consider it. Then her expression hardened again. "There's nothing to fix, Mother. Prometheus is the future of Montgomery Industries. Daddy didn't understand it, and neither do you." "Then explain it to me," I pleaded. She gathered her papers, sliding them into a leather portfolio. "It's too late for explanations. You've made your choice." "What choice?" "Victoria, I've just lost my husband. I don't want to lose my daughter, too." She paused at the door, her back to me. "You already have." After she left, I sank into the nearest chair, the weight of everything crushing me. What had happened to my family? The loving husband who kept secrets. The daughter who seemed to despise me. The company I now controlled, but didn't understand. I was still sitting there when James Wilson returned, his face grave. "Mrs. Montgomery, I'm so sorry about the ambush. I had no idea Victoria had called that meeting." "What is Prometheus, Mr. Wilson?" He closed the door and took the seat beside me. "It's complicated. On paper, it's a research subsidiary developing proprietary technology for oil extraction. In reality..." He hesitated. In reality, I'm not entirely sure. The financials don't add up. The research outputs are vague. Richard started asking questions about 6 months ago. That's when things got strange. Strange how? Pressure to approve additional funding without standard oversight. Missing documentation. And Victoria suddenly taking a much more active role in operations. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. Richard believed someone was embezzling funds through Prometheus. He was getting close to proving it when he died. I finished quietly. Wilson nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "Mrs. Montgomery, I don't want to suggest anything inappropriate, but you think his death wasn't an accident," I said, the words tasting like ash. "And you think Victoria might be involved." "I don't know," he said quickly. "I truly don't." But Richard was worried enough about her involvement in Prometheus that he changed his will. "He left everything to you, for a reason." "To protect the company," I murmured. "To protect our legacy. And possibly to protect Victoria from herself." Wilson leaned forward. "Mrs. Montgomery, whatever is happening with Prometheus, it's big. Richard believed it could bring down the entire company if exposed improperly." "What was on the USB drive?" I asked suddenly. Wilson looked confused. "What USB drive?" "Richard left a drive in his safe. Victoria found it last night." Alarm flashed across his face. "I don't know about any drive. But if Richard left it in his safe, then it contains proof," I finished. "Evidence of whatever he was investigating." Wilson nodded grimly. "Evidence that's now in Victoria's hands." The official board meeting began promptly at 9, with Victoria conspicuously absent. I sat in Richard's chair at the head of the table, feeling the weight of 12 pairs of eyes on me as James Wilson made the formal introductions. As you all know, Richard's tragic passing has left control of Montgomery Industries to his wife, Eleanor. While this transition may be unexpected, the board pledges its full support during this difficult time. I nodded my thanks, studying the faces around the table. Who among them knew about Prometheus? Who could I trust? "Before we begin," I said, finding my voice, "I want to address the rumors head-on. Yes, Richard changed his will shortly before his death. Yes, this gives me controlling interest in the company. And yes, I intend to honor his wishes by maintaining the integrity and legacy of Montgomery Industries. I opened the folder Wilson had prepared for me. Now, I understand there's a pressing issue regarding the Prometheus subsidiary that requires immediate attention. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Prometheus was Richard's pet project, said a woman I recognized as the head of research and development. It's highly confidential and compartmentalized. Most of us have limited information. Yet it's received over $30 million in funding in the past year, I noted, reviewing the figures in front of me. That's a substantial investment for a pet project. The potential returns are substantial as well, countered an older man at the far end of the table. Victoria has presented promising preliminary results. Victoria, I repeated, keeping my voice neutral. My daughter seems quite involved in Prometheus, despite her limited technical background. I'd like to understand why. Before anyone could respond, the boardroom doors burst open. Victoria strode in, followed by a man I didn't recognize, tall, impeccably dressed, with the sharp features and cold eyes of a predator. I apologize for my tardiness, Victoria announced, not sounding apologetic at all. I'd like to introduce Martin Drake, our outside counsel specializing in corporate restructuring. The board members exchanged confused glances. Charles Bartlett, our lead counsel, stood up. Ms. Montgomery, this is highly irregular. The board hasn't approved outside counsel. The situation is irregular, Charles, Victoria said smoothly, taking a seat halfway down the table. Mother's unexpected control of the company presents unique challenges. Martin Drake remained standing, his hawkish gaze fixed on me. Mrs. Montgomery, I've been retained to ensure a smooth transition that protects both the company's interests and Ms. Victoria's position within it. Retained by whom, Mr. Drake? I asked, meeting his gaze steadily. His smile didn't reach his eyes. By concerned parties with significant investments in Montgomery Industries' continued success. I see. I turned to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is for board members and approved executives only. Mr. Drake, while I'm sure your services are valuable, you have not been approved by this board. I must ask you to leave. Drake didn't move. Mrs. Montgomery, I strongly advise against making hasty decisions. There are aspects of the company's operations that you don't yet understand. You mean Prometheus? I said flatly. A flash of surprise crossed his face. Among other things, yes. Mr. Drake, I said, rising to my feet. I may be new to this position, but I am not new to being underestimated. This is my company now. If you have business with Montgomery Industries, you can schedule a proper appointment through appropriate channels. This meeting is closed to you. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Charles Bartlett stood. Security can be here in 30 seconds, Mr. Drake. Your choice. Drake's cold eyes narrowed, but he inclined his head slightly. As you wish. Victoria, we'll continue our discussion later. With a final, measuring look at me, he left the room. Victoria's face was a mask of controlled fury. You have no idea what you've just done. Enlighten me, I challenged. What exactly is Prometheus, Victoria? And who is Martin Drake really representing? Prometheus is saving this company, she hissed. And you're going to destroy everything with your ignorant meddling. I turned to the board. I'd like a full audit of the Prometheus project, effective immediately. All financials, all research, all personnel. Nothing held back. You can't do that. Victoria slammed her hand on the table. Prometheus operates under special confidentiality protocols established by Daddy himself. Protocols that, as the new head of this company, I can override, I countered. Unless there's something in particular you're trying to hide, the challenge hung in the air between us. Mother and daughter, locked in a battle neither of us had ever imagined. Victoria stood slowly, gathering her things. You want war, Mother?
Fine.
But remember, you chose this path. She looked around the table. Anyone leaving with me now will be protected when this is over. Anyone staying. She let the threat hang unfinished. To my surprise, no one moved. Victoria's face flushed with anger and perhaps shock at this abandonment. Without another word, she stormed out, the heavy doors swinging shut behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, James Wilson spoke. "Mrs. Montgomery, I think you should know that Richard suspected Prometheus wasn't just embezzlement. He believed someone was using company resources to develop something potentially dangerous. Something illegal." "Illegal how?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. "We don't know the details," Charles Bartlett interjected. Richard was keeping his investigation close to the chest, but he was worried enough to change his will and secure certain evidence. "The USB drive," I murmured. Bartlett nodded. "Among other things. There's a safe deposit box as well. Richard left instructions that it should only be accessed by you in the event of his death under suspicious circumstances." My head was spinning. "Are you saying my husband suspected he might be murdered?" The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Finally, Wilson spoke. "I think he was preparing for all possibilities, Mrs. Montgomery. And my daughter? Do you believe she's involved?" No one answered directly. Their silence was answer enough. "I need to see that safe deposit box," I said firmly. "And I need the audit of Prometheus to begin immediately. Whatever is happening stops now." As the meeting continued, we addressed other business matters, but my mind kept returning to the same horrifying question. Could my own daughter be involved in her father's death? Had Victoria's greed and ambition pushed her to the ultimate betrayal? And if so, what would she do now that I stood in her way? The answers, I feared, might destroy what little remained of my family forever. After leaving the boardroom, I found myself standing in Richard's office, now my office, staring out at the city that had made the Montgomery fortune. For generations, we'd been a pillar of this community. Our name graced hospitals, university buildings, and charitable foundations. What would happen to that legacy if the truth about Prometheus came to light? The office itself was a testament to old money and power, leather and mahogany, oil paintings of stern-faced Montgomery patriarchs, awards and accolades lining the walls. Richard had spent more time here than at home in recent years. Had he known then what was happening under his nose? A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. James Wilson stood in the doorway, his face grim. "The bank called," he said without preamble. "They're ready for you to access the safe deposit box." I nodded, gathering my purse. "Have you started the audit?" "The team is assembling now. But, Mrs. Montgomery," he hesitated. "Victoria has already called an emergency shareholders meeting for tomorrow morning. She's trying to rally the minority shareholders against you." "Can she do that so quickly?" "She's been planning this," Wilson said quietly. "The meeting with Drake this morning wasn't their first. She's been laying groundwork for weeks, maybe months." The realization struck me like a physical blow. Victoria had been preparing for this before Richard's death. Before the will reading. Before any of it. Had she known what Richard was planning? Had she expected to be cut out of the will? "Take me to the bank," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to know what Richard was hiding." First National Bank's private client suite was designed to convey security and discretion. The manager, a silver-haired woman named Margaret Fellows, greeted me personally. "Mrs. Montgomery, please accept my condolences on your loss. Richard was a valued client for many years." "Thank you, Margaret." I forced a small smile. "I understand my husband left some items for me." She nodded solemnly. "This way, please." Wilson and I followed her through a security checkpoint and into the vault area. The walls were lined with metal boxes of various sizes, each secured with 2 keys, one held by the bank, one by the client. "Box 1121, Margaret said, stopping before a medium-sized drawer. "Do you have the key?" I reached into my purse, pulling out the small key Richard had given me years ago. "For emergencies only," he'd said. I'd assumed it was for important documents, maybe some emergency cash. I never imagined it would contain evidence of corporate malfeasance. Or worse. Margaret inserted her master key, and I added mine. The drawer slid open smoothly. Inside was a sealed manila envelope, a small recording device, and a handwritten note. The sight of Richard's bold, slanting handwriting made my throat tighten with grief. Eleanor, if you're reading this, my suspicions were correct. I've arranged things to protect you and the company, but Victoria may not see it that way. Trust no one completely, not even those who seem to be on your side. The recording contains my thoughts and findings as of April 15th. The envelope contains documentation I've gathered. There's more, much more, on a server only I can access. Or rather, only you can access now. The password is the name of the hotel where we spent our honeymoon, followed by the date we first met, MMDDYY. I'm sorry to place this burden on you. I truly believed I could resolve this without involving you. I was wrong. All my love. Richard. I looked up at Wilson, who was watching me expectantly. Could I have a moment alone, please? He seemed about to object, then nodded. Of course. I'll wait outside with Mrs. Fellows. When they were gone, I picked up the recording device with trembling hands. It was small and sleek, the kind journalists use for interviews. I pressed play. Richard's voice filled the small space, and for a moment, it was as if he were there with me. Strong, confident, alive. Eleanor, if you're listening to this, things have gone very wrong. I'm recording this on April 15th, 2025. For the past 6 months, I've been investigating financial irregularities at Montgomery Industries, specifically a research subsidiary called Prometheus. I leaned closer, hanging on every word. Prometheus was Victoria's idea originally, a way to diversify our holdings into emerging tech. On paper, they're developing enhanced extraction techniques for deep-sea oil reserves. The reality is something else entirely. There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. The money isn't going to research. At least, not the research they're claiming. I've traced transfers to shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, and Singapore. From there, the trail gets murky, but I've managed to connect some dots. They're developing some kind of biological agent. I don't know what exactly, but it's caught the attention of some very dangerous people. My blood ran cold. Biological agent? This was far worse than embezzlement. Victoria is the primary liaison with Prometheus leadership. She claims it's all above board, a revolutionary bioengineered enzyme that breaks down petroleum compounds. Clean energy research. But the security, the secrecy, the shell companies, it doesn't add up. Another pause, longer this time. When Richard spoke again, his voice was lower, as if he feared being overheard. 2 days ago, I confronted Victoria with what I'd found. She denied everything, of course, but there was something in her eyes, Eleanor. Something cold. Something I've never seen before. She told me I was becoming paranoid in my old age, that I should consider stepping down as CEO. He gave a bitter laugh. My own daughter, suggesting I'm mentally unfit to lead the company my great-grandfather founded. That night, I found evidence that someone had accessed my private computer. Files were missing. That's when I decided to secure what evidence I had and change my will. I can't prove Victoria is directly involved in whatever Prometheus is really doing, but she's connected somehow. And until I know the truth, I can't risk leaving the company in her hands. There was another long pause, filled only with the sound of his breathing. Eleanor, I know this is an impossible position to put you in. I've spent our entire marriage shielding you from the uglier side of business. But you're stronger than anyone knows, certainly stronger than I've given you credit for. If something happens to me, you're the only one I trust to finish what I've started. Find the truth about Prometheus. Protect our legacy. And protect our daughter if you can, even from herself. The recording ended. I sat frozen, the echo of Richard's voice still ringing in my ears. Protect our daughter, even from herself. What had Victoria gotten involved in? With shaking hands, I opened the manila envelope. Inside were financial records, copies of emails, and surveillance photos. One showed Victoria meeting with Martin Drake in a hotel bar, date stamped 3 months ago. Another showed her entering a nondescript building in the warehouse district, Drake at her side. The most disturbing was a series of photos of Victoria accepting a briefcase from a man I didn't recognize, a hard-faced individual with military bearing and cold eyes. Clipped to these photos was a note in Richard's handwriting. Maxim Volkov, former Russian intelligence. Now private contractor. Dangerous. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but it remained frustratingly incomplete. What was this biological agent? Who was Maxim Volkov working for? And most importantly, had Victoria arranged her father's accident when he got too close to the truth? I gathered everything back into the envelope and tucked it into my purse. Richard had entrusted me with this investigation, and I wouldn't let him down, even if the truth destroyed what was left of my family. The ride back to Montgomery Industries was silent, Wilson respecting my need to process what I'd learned. When we arrived, I asked him to arrange a meeting with the audit team and the head of IT. I need access to Richard's private server, I explained, and I need it before the shareholders' meeting tomorrow. Wilson nodded. I'll make it happen. What did you find, if you don't mind my asking? I studied him, remembering Richard's warning. Trust no one completely, not even those who seem to be on your side. Evidence that Prometheus isn't what it claims to be, I said carefully. But I need more before I can take action. In the IT department, a nervous young man named Evan waited for us. Mrs. Montgomery, Mr. Wilson said this was urgent. I need access to my husband's private server, I said. He mentioned it was secured with a password only he and now I would know. Evan nodded. Mr. Montgomery had a separate secure server that wasn't connected to the company network. Very cutting edge, very private. I helped set it up, but I've never accessed it. He led us to a small room at the back of the IT department. Inside was a single computer terminal. This accesses the server directly, Evan explained. It's not connected to the internet or the company intranet. Whatever Mr. Montgomery stored here, he wanted it completely isolated. Thank you, Evan. That will be all. I waited until he left, then turned to Wilson. I need privacy for this part. He hesitated. Mrs. Montgomery, given what we're dealing with, I don't think you should be alone with potentially sensitive information. James, I said firmly, using his first name deliberately, my husband trusted me with this. Not you, not the board, me. Please respect that. After a long moment, he nodded. I'll be right outside if you need me. When I was alone, I sat at the terminal and powered it on. The screen lit up with a simple password prompt. Following Richard's instructions, I typed in Villa Borghese 052193, the hotel in Rome where we'd honeymooned, followed by the day we'd met. The system unlocked, revealing a desktop with a single folder labeled Prometheus Complete. Inside were hundreds of files, financial records, emails, photographs, and video recordings. It would take days to go through everything. I needed to focus on the most critical information before the shareholders' meeting. I opened a document titled Executive Summary. It was dated just 3 days before Richard's death. Prometheus Project, Findings and Conclusions. After 6 months of investigation, I can now confirm that Prometheus is not developing petroleum extraction technology as claimed. The true purpose appears to be the development of a weaponized biological agent designed to target specific genetic markers. Primary funding comes through a series of shell companies ultimately connected to Drake International Consulting. Martin Drake serves as intermediary between Prometheus researchers and the end client, believed to be a consortium of private military contractors including Blacklake Security. Victoria's involvement remains unclear. Financial records show she has received significant payments from Drake International, $2.5 million over 18 months, ostensibly as consulting fees. Whether she is fully aware of Prometheus's true purpose is unknown, but the evidence suggests at minimum she has knowingly facilitated illegal fund transfers and corporate espionage. Key personnel: Dr. Anton Mercer, lead researcher, formerly with CDC Bioweapons Division. Martin Drake, legal/financial facilitator. Maxim Volkov, security and procurement. Victoria Montgomery, corporate liaison. The biological agent, codenamed Selective, appears designed for targeted population control. If deployed, it could cause a pandemic affecting only those with specific genetic markers. The potential for ethnic-specific biological warfare is obvious and deeply concerning. I have gathered sufficient evidence for federal prosecution. I plan to contact the FBI after confronting the board with my findings on Monday.
Monday.
The day Richard died. I sat back, stunned by the implications. This wasn't just corporate fraud or embezzlement. This was bioterrorism. And Victoria, my daughter, was involved. A notification popped up on the screen. Backup in progress. Someone was accessing the server remotely. My heart raced. The server was supposed to be isolated, accessible only from this terminal. How was a backup happening? I quickly began copying files to a thumb drive I found in the desk drawer, starting with Richard's summary document and the most incriminating evidence against Prometheus. As I worked, the backup notification continued, showing progress. 25%, 30%, 35%. I had to assume someone was stealing Richard's evidence, someone who knew about the secure server. Someone on the inside. The door opened behind me. I turned, expecting Wilson, but instead found Charles Bartlett, the company's lead counsel. "Mrs. Montgomery," he said smoothly, "I see you found Richard's little project." I carefully positioned myself to hide the thumb drive copying files. "Mr. Bartlett, I didn't realize you had access to this room." "Oh, I have access to most things around here," he said, moving closer. Richard valued my discretion. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. I glanced at the screen. 52% complete. "Did Richard share his Prometheus findings with you?" I asked, trying to keep him talking. Bartlett smiled thinly. "In a manner of speaking. We discussed his concerns." "And what did you advise him to do?" "To proceed cautiously. Corporate espionage, bioweapons development. These are serious allegations. The kind that could destroy Montgomery Industries if handled improperly." He was directly behind me now, looking over my shoulder at the screen. "I see you've found a summary. Alarming reading, isn't it?" The backup had reached 68%. The thumb drive was copying even faster, already at 75%. "Did Victoria know you were aware of her involvement?" asked, trying to sound casual. His smile widened. "Victoria and I have an understanding. We both want what's best for the company." "And Richard? Did he want what was best for the company too?" Bartlett's expression hardened. Richard became a liability. His outdated moral qualms threatened everything we've built. The confession hung in the air between us.
We.
Not they. We've built. Bartlett was involved with Prometheus. The thumb drive blinked, indicating the copy was complete. I pulled it out and slipped it into my pocket in one smooth motion. "You know," Bartlett said conversationally, "Richard had a similar habit. Always keeping a physical backup." His eyes flicked to my pocket. It didn't serve him well in the end. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Bartlett?" "Warning you, Mrs. Montgomery, as a courtesy to Richard's widow." He straightened his tie. "The shareholders' meeting tomorrow will not go in your favor. Victoria has secured enough proxy votes to challenge your control. The smart play would be to resign now, gracefully. Take the generous settlement we're prepared to offer and enjoy your remaining years in comfort. And if I refuse?" His smile was reptilian. "Then things might get unpleasant. Accidents happen, Mrs. Montgomery, even to the careful." The backup reached 100%. Bartlett glanced at the screen with satisfaction. "I'll give you until morning to consider your position. For now, I suggest you go home and rest. Tomorrow will be challenging." With a final, measuring look, he left, closing the door behind him. I sat frozen, my heart pounding. Bartlett had as good as admitted involvement in Richard's death. And he just threatened me with the same fate if I didn't cooperate. The office phone rang, making me jump. I answered with a shaking hand. "Mrs. Montgomery?" It was Wilson. "Is everything all right?" Bartlett just left looking rather pleased with himself. "James," I said quietly, "I need you to meet me at my car in 5 minutes. Don't tell anyone where you're going. And if you have any loyalty to Richard, don't trust Bartlett." "What's happened?" "I'll explain when I see you." 5 minutes. I hung up before he could ask more questions. I powered down the terminal, though I knew it was too late. Bartlett had already copied everything. But I had my own copy safely tucked away, and more importantly, I knew who the enemy was. Or at least some of them. Wilson was waiting by my car when I arrived in the underground parking garage, his face tense with concern. "Get in," I said, unlocking the doors. "We can't talk here." Once we were moving, I explained what I discovered: Prometheus's true purpose, Victoria's involvement, and Bartlett's thinly veiled confession and threat. Wilson listened in horrified silence. When I finished, he let out a long breath. My God. Bioweapons? I knew it was bad. But this, and you think Bartlett was involved in Richard's death? He all but admitted it, I said grimly. And he threatened me with the same if I don't step aside tomorrow. We need to go to the FBI. With what? Suspicions? Richard's evidence is circumstantial at best. We need something concrete. Wilson ran a hand through his hair. The shareholders' meeting is at 9 a.m. If Victoria has enough proxy votes, she'll take control of the company and bury everything. I finished. We need to find irrefutable proof before then.
How?
We're talking about a secret bioweapons lab. It's not like we can just walk in and take pictures. An idea struck me. Maybe we can. Richard's photos showed Victoria and Drake entering a building in the warehouse district. If that's where Prometheus is actually operating. Wilson's eyes widened. You want to break into a bioweapons lab? Mrs. Montgomery, with all due respect, that's insane. And almost certainly illegal. More illegal than developing ethnic-specific biological weapons? More illegal than murdering my husband. I took a sharp turn, heading toward the industrial area of the city. I'm not suggesting we break in. Just confirm its existence. Get photos, maybe record some conversations. Enough to convince the FBI to get involved. Wilson looked deeply uncomfortable. This is dangerous, Mrs. Montgomery. Call me Eleanor, I said, surprising myself. If we're going to risk our lives together, we might as well be on a first-name basis. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Eleanor, then. I still think this is incredibly risky. You don't have to come, I said, pulling over to the side of the road. In fact, it's probably better if you don't. If something goes wrong, the company will need someone who knows the truth. He was silent for a long moment. Then, Richard was my friend for 30 years. If someone murdered him, I need to know. His jaw set in determination. I'm coming with you. I nodded, oddly relieved not to be doing this alone. The address from Richard's photos was 1782 Waterfront Drive. It should be about 10 minutes from here. As we drove deeper into the industrial area, the buildings became more dilapidated, the streets emptier. The sun was setting, casting long shadows between the warehouses and abandoned factories. There, Wilson pointed. 1782. I pulled into an alley across the street and cut the engine. The building looked unremarkable, a concrete structure with few windows and a loading dock. The only sign of life was a security guard stationed at the entrance and a few cars in the small parking lot. Now what? Wilson whispered, as if we might be overheard, even inside the car. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Now we wait. Victoria might show up, or Drake. If we're lucky, we might see Dr. Mercer or this Maxim Volkov character. And if we're unlucky, they'll see us first. We settled in for what might be a long wait. But we'd barely been there 20 minutes when a sleek black Bentley pulled up to the security gate. The window rolled down, revealing Victoria's profile, unmistakable even from a distance. That's her. I breathed, raising my phone to take photos. And that's Drake beside her. The guard waved them through, and the Bentley disappeared into an underground parking area. Now we know she's here, Wilson said. But that doesn't prove anything about bioweapons. We need to get closer, I decided. There's a service entrance on the side. If we can get to a window, maybe we can see what's happening inside. Wilson looked doubtful but nodded. If we're caught, we're lost executives looking for a business meeting, I supplied, confused about the address. We left the car and crossed the street, trying to look casual despite the growing darkness and our business attire, which stood out starkly in this industrial neighborhood. The service entrance was unguarded but locked with a keycard system. Now what? Wilson whispered. I was about to suggest we try another approach when the door opened from inside. A woman in a lab coat stepped out, lighting a cigarette. She propped the door open with her foot, apparently unwilling to use her keycard twice for a smoke break. I caught Wilson's eye and nodded slightly. We waited until she was distracted by her phone, then quickly and quietly slipped past her into the building. Inside was a long hallway with doors on either side. Most were locked, but one stood partially open, revealing what looked like a break room. We ducked inside, finding it empty but for vending machines and a small table. This is insane, Wilson muttered. We need to leave before. Voices approached from the hallway. We froze, then quickly moved behind the vending machines as two men entered the break room. Volkov is getting nervous, one said, his voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. The old man's wife is proving more troublesome than expected. Bartlett assured us she'll be handled, the second man replied. The shareholders' meeting tomorrow will remove her from the equation. And if it doesn't, Volkov wants contingency plans. There are always contingencies, Doctor. You focus on getting Selective ready for the demonstration. Let Volkov worry about the Montgomery woman.
Doctor.
This must be Anton Mercer, the lead researcher Richard had identified. And they were discussing me and contingency plans if I wasn't handled at the shareholders' meeting. The demonstration is in 3 days, Mercer said nervously. We're still seeing variable mortality rates in the Asian genome test subjects. If we rush this, the client isn't concerned with perfection, just proof of concept. Selective already targets the specified genetic markers with 89% accuracy. That's sufficient for Phase 1 funding. My blood ran cold. Test subjects? Mortality rates? They were actually testing this weapon on people. And the delivery system? The aerosol works as designed. Colorless, odorless, and leaves no trace after 48 hours. Perfect for targeted deployment in urban environments. I felt sick. This wasn't just theoretical research. They had a working bioweapon ready for demonstration to a client in 3 days. The men moved to the vending machines. Wilson and I pressed ourselves against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. If they looked behind the machines, a phone rang. One of the men answered. Yes? She's where? Understood. We're on our way. He hung up. Security thinks they spotted someone matching Eleanor Montgomery's description entering the building. Volkov wants us in the secure lab immediately. They hurried out, leaving us in stunned silence. They knew I was here. Somehow they'd spotted me. We need to leave. Now, Wilson whispered urgently. We peered into the hallway. It was empty, but we could hear voices and footsteps in the distance, growing closer. This way, I said, pointing in the opposite direction from the approaching sounds. We moved as quickly and quietly as possible, looking for an exit. The hallway ended in a set of double doors marked, "Authorized personnel only." Behind us, the voices grew louder. We don't have a choice, Wilson said, pushing through the doors. We found ourselves on a catwalk overlooking an enormous laboratory space. Below, dozens of people in hazmat suits moved between workstations. Large glass containment units lined one wall, each holding what looked like hospital beds. And in those beds, people, unconscious or restrained, I couldn't tell, but definitely human. Oh my God, I breathed. They're actually testing it on humans. Eleanor, Wilson grabbed my arm, pointing across the lab. Victoria stood with Drake and a severe-looking man I recognized from Richard's photos as Maxim Volkov. They were looking at a computer screen, Victoria nodding in apparent approval. My daughter, my only child, was knowingly participating in the development of an ethnic-specific bioweapon. A weapon that had already been tested on unwilling human subjects. In that moment, something in me broke. The last lingering hope that Victoria was somehow an unwitting participant, that she'd been manipulated or misled, died a swift and brutal death. The woman below wasn't my daughter anymore. She was a stranger wearing Victoria's face. We have what we need, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Let's go. We turned to retrace our steps, only to find our path blocked by two security guards, guns drawn. Mrs. Montgomery, one said calmly. Mr. Volkov would like a word. They separated us immediately, taking Wilson one way and me another. I was led to a small conference room where Volkov waited alone, his cold eyes assessing me as I was pushed into a chair. Mrs. Montgomery, he said, his Russian accent light but unmistakable. This is an unexpected pleasure. We weren't scheduled to meet until after tomorrow's transition of power. Where is James Wilson? I demanded. Your companion is comfortable. For now. Volkov remained standing, looming over me. I'm more interested in why the grieving widow of Richard Montgomery is breaking into a private research facility. I think we both know why I'm here, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. And we both know what happened to my husband when he discovered what you're doing. A ghost of a smile touched Volkov's lips. Richard was a man of principle, admirable, but ultimately inconvenient. You killed him. I facilitated an outcome beneficial to all parties except Richard himself. He shrugged. Business, Mrs. Montgomery. Nothing personal. And is murdering me also just business? That depends entirely on you. He sat down across from me. Your husband's death was regrettable but necessary. Yours needn't be if you cooperate. By stepping down tomorrow? Letting Victoria take control? Precisely. You retire to a comfortable life. The company continues under new leadership. Everyone wins. Except the people you plan to murder with your bioweapon, I countered. Volkov's eyes narrowed slightly, the first crack in his composed facade. You've been quite thorough in your investigation. Richard would be proud. I want to see my daughter. All in good time. First, we need to come to an understanding about tomorrow. The door opened, and Martin Drake entered, his expression grim. Security breach on level 3. Someone accessed the containment logs. Volkov cursed softly in Russian. Find them. Now. Drake hesitated. It's Wilson. We lost him during the transfer. A flicker of hope sparked in my chest. James had escaped. If he could get out of the building with what we'd seen. Volkov stood abruptly. Lock down the building. No one leaves. He turned to me. Mrs. Montgomery, I'm afraid our conversation must be cut short. Consider carefully what we discussed. Your cooperation ensures your survival and Mr. Wilson's. Your defiance guarantees neither. He left with Drake, the door locking automatically behind them. I was alone, but not for long. Victoria entered a few minutes later, her face a mask of cold fury. What are you doing here, Mother? I could ask you the same thing, I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. Bioweapons, Victoria? Human testing? This is what you've become. This is business, she said dismissively. Prometheus is developing the most valuable technology of the 21st century. Targeted pandemic control. Pandemic control? I repeated incredulously. You're creating a weapon designed to kill specific ethnic groups. We're creating a tool that can target genetic markers. Yes, those often correlate with ethnicity, but the applications go far beyond warfare. She leaned forward. Imagine being able to control population growth in specific regions, or eliminate genetic predispositions to violence, or ensure compliance in problematic populations. I stared at my daughter, horrified. Do you hear yourself? You're talking about eugenics, genocide. I'm talking about progress, she snapped. The kind of progress Daddy was too weak to embrace. He built a company extracting oil from the ground like it was still the 1900s. I'm building the future. By murdering your own father? Something flickered in her eyes, not remorse, but annoyance. That wasn't the plan. He was supposed to retire quietly, hand over control. The accident was a last resort. The casual way she referred to Richard's murder, her own father's murder, sent ice through my veins. And what's your plan for me? Another accident? That depends on you, Victoria said, her voice softening into something almost reasonable. Tomorrow, you'll announce your decision to step down, citing grief and the burden of responsibility. You'll endorse me as your successor. You'll sign over your shares to a trust one control. She shrugged elegantly. Then you can retire to the villa in Tuscany. Live out your days in comfort. And if I refuse? Her smile was chilling. Then yes, there will be another tragic accident in the Montgomery family. And unlike Daddy, you won't die quickly. The door opened again, and Volkov entered, his expression grim. Wilson escaped. With help. Victoria's composure cracked. What do you mean, with help? Who else knows about this facility? Unknown. But security footage shows a woman assisting him, Dr. Mercer's assistant, Sarah Chen. They took a hard drive from the main lab. Volkov's cold eyes fixed on me. It seems your companion made quite an impression in his short time here. Hope surged through me. James had escaped with evidence, and apparently an inside accomplice. If he could get to the FBI. Find them, Victoria ordered. Use whatever resources necessary. Already in progress, Volkov assured her. But we have a more immediate problem. The demonstration is in 3 days. If Wilson reaches the authorities before then, move it up, Victoria said without hesitation. Tomorrow, after the shareholders' meeting, I'll have legal control of Montgomery Industries and will demonstrate selective to the clients immediately. The product isn't fully tested, Volkov warned. It's tested enough. Victoria's eyes gleamed with a fervor that terrified me. 89% effectiveness is sufficient to secure the full funding package. We can perfect it afterward. They were discussing murdering countless people as if it were a simple business transaction. My daughter had become a monster. Or perhaps had always been one, hidden beneath the surface. What about her? Volkov nodded toward me. Victoria considered me coldly. Keep her secure until after the meeting. If Wilson hasn't been found by then, make it look like a murder-suicide. Grieving widow, unstable after her husband's death, kills herself after shooting the CFO who was embezzling company funds. Victoria, I said, unable to keep the pleading note from my voice. This isn't you. This can't be you. Think about what you're doing. For just a moment, something human flickered in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold calculation I'd seen at the will reading. This is exactly who I am, Mother. It's who I've always been. You just never wanted to see it. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I did love Daddy in my way. And I do love you. That's why I'm offering you the villa instead of what Volkov suggested. A small, tight smile. See you tomorrow, Mother. Try to be reasonable when the time comes. After they left, I sat alone in the locked conference room, my mind racing. James had escaped with evidence. There was still hope if he could reach the authorities in time. If he wasn't captured. If Victoria's influence didn't reach into law enforcement as well. Too many ifs. I looked around the room, searching for anything that might help me escape. The conference room was minimally furnished, table, chairs, a wall-mounted screen for presentations. No windows. One door undoubtedly guarded. My purse had been taken along with my phone. I still wore my watch, but it was a simple Cartier with no smart features. Richard had preferred classic timepieces to modern technology. Richard. What would he do in this situation? I closed my eyes, trying to channel my husband's strategic mind. Richard had always been 3 steps ahead, always had contingency plans. He wouldn't have left me defenseless. The watch. My eyes snapped open. Richard had given me the watch for our 25th anniversary. A beautiful timepiece for a beautiful woman, he'd said. And it has a special feature, just in case. I examined the watch more carefully. It looked like a standard Cartier tank, elegant, simple, valuable but not ostentatious. What special feature had Richard meant? I pressed the crown, the small knob used to set the time. Nothing unusual happened. I tried turning it while pressed. Still nothing. Then I remembered Richard's words. 3 pushes in quick succession, then hold for emergency help. Don't test it, it's connected directly to security. I pressed the crown 3 times rapidly, then held it down. The watch face illuminated briefly, then returned to normal. Had it worked? Or was I remembering incorrectly? There was no way to know. All I could do was wait and hope. Hope that James had escaped with the evidence. Hope that Richard's special feature had alerted someone. Hope that I could survive until tomorrow's shareholders meeting. Because despite Victoria's threats, despite the danger, I had no intention of stepping down. I would fight for Richard's legacy, for justice, and yes, even for the daughter I'd lost to greed and ambition. I don't know how long I sat in that conference room, watching the minute hand of my Cartier make its slow, inexorable circuit. 1 hour.
2.
The building grew quieter as night deepened, the sounds of urgency fading to the occasional footstep passing my door. No one came. No rescue. No sign that Richard's watch had summoned help. Just silence and growing despair. I thought of James Wilson, hopefully free and taking evidence to the authorities. I thought of Richard, murdered for trying to stop this nightmare. And I thought of Victoria, my daughter, my only child, orchestrating it all with cold calculation. When had she changed? Or had she always been this person, and I'd been too blind to see it? The memories flooded back. Victoria as a toddler, screaming when another child took her toy. Victoria at 12, lying smoothly about breaking an antique vase. Victoria at 16, manipulating her father into buying her a sports car after he'd explicitly said no. Small things. Normal things I'd told myself. All children test boundaries. All teenagers rebel. But now, looking back, I could see the pattern that I'd willfully ignored. The casual cruelty. The lack of empathy. The absolute certainty that rules didn't apply to her. The door opened suddenly, startling me from my thoughts. A young Asian woman in a lab coat slipped inside, closing it quickly behind her. "Mrs. Montgomery," she whispered, glancing nervously at the door.
I am Sarah Chen.
"I helped your friend escape." Hope surged through me. "James got away? Is he safe?" She nodded. "He contacted the FBI. They're preparing a raid, but it will take time, warrants, tactical teams. They can't move until morning at the earliest." "That's too late," I said urgently. "Victoria is moving up the demonstration to tomorrow, right after the shareholders' meeting. They're going to deploy the weapon." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's insane. Selective isn't stable enough for deployment. The mortality rates in the latest tests are inconsistent." "I don't think Victoria cares about consistency," I interrupted. "Only that it works well enough to secure funding." Sarah bit her lip, clearly conflicted. "We need to get you out of here. Mr. Wilson is worried they'll kill you before the FBI can act."
How?
"There are guards everywhere." She pulled a key card from her pocket. "I have access to most of the facility. If we can reach the service elevator, we can get to the parking garage." She hesitated. "But first, there's something you need to see. Something Mr. Wilson couldn't access." "What is it?" "The truth about Selective." She helped me to my feet. "Stay close to me and act like I'm escorting you for questioning." We slipped out of the conference room. The hallway was empty, but I could hear voices in distant rooms. Sarah led me through a maze of corridors, swiping her keycard at various checkpoints. We passed laboratories where scientists worked even at this late hour, oblivious to our presence. "In here," Sarah whispered, ushering me into a small office. She locked the door behind us and moved to a computer. "This is Dr. Mercer's private terminal. He doesn't know I have his password." Her fingers flew over the keyboard, navigating through layers of security. "I've been working with Dr. Mercer for 3 years. I believed we were developing medical countermeasures to bioterrorism threats. Treatments for weaponized pathogens." Her expression hardened. 6 months ago, I realized the truth. We weren't creating the cure. We were creating the disease. The screen filled with technical data and charts. "This is Selective, a genetically engineered pathogen designed to target specific DNA sequences. It was originally developed as a precision cancer treatment, killing only cells with certain genetic markers while leaving healthy cells untouched." "Cancer treatment?" I echoed. "How did it become a weapon?" "Victoria Montgomery," Sarah said grimly. "She approached Dr. Mercer 2 years ago, offering unlimited funding if he could adapt his research for broader applications. He was desperate for financing after his grants were cut. He didn't realize what she really wanted until it was too late." She pulled up another file, A video of a laboratory animal facility. Cages line the walls, filled with monkeys of different species. This was the first large-scale test. They exposed all subjects to the same pathogen strain. The video showed the monkeys going about their business, eating, grooming, playing. Then, over the course of several days, some began to sicken while others remained perfectly healthy. By the end of the week, roughly half were dead. The rest showed no symptoms whatsoever. The pathogen was engineered to target genetic markers more common in certain primate species, Sarah explained. The next phase was human testing. My stomach churned. The people we saw in the containment units? Sarah nodded grimly. Homeless people. Undocumented immigrants. People who wouldn't be missed. They're told they're participating in a paid medical study. Her voice broke slightly. Most of them die. My God, I whispered. How could Victoria be involved in this? It's not just your daughter, Sarah said. This goes beyond Prometheus. There's a consortium of private military contractors, government officials from several countries, even pharmaceutical companies. They all see different applications for selective weapons, population control, expensive, personalized medicine for the elite. She pulled up another file, a list of names and organizations. I recognized some of them. Prominent politicians, billionaire industrialists, military leaders. At the top was a name that made my blood run cold. Senator Howard Mitchell, chairman of the Defense Appropriations Committee. Victoria's godfather. Richard's oldest friend. Senator Mitchell is involved in this? I asked, my voice barely audible.
He's not just involved.
He's the primary backer. Sarah's eyes were sympathetic. I'm sorry, Mrs. Montgomery. The corruption runs deep. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Howard had been part of our lives for decades. He'd bounced Victoria on his knee, attended her graduation, given her internships in Washington. He'd been the one to suggest she join Montgomery Industries after business school. He'd been grooming her all along. Tomorrow's demonstration, I said urgently. Who's it for? Foreign buyers. Military representatives from countries that can't officially develop bioweapons due to treaties. They're paying billions for technology that can't be traced back to them. Sarah closed the files and shut down the computer. We need to move. The shift change is in 15 minutes. It's our best chance to reach the parking garage unnoticed. We slipped back into the corridor, Sarah leading the way with confident purpose. Anyone watching would assume she was escorting me to another location for questioning. The service elevator is through here, she whispered, swiping her card at a nondescript door. We entered a utilitarian hallway used for deliveries and maintenance. The elevator stood at the far end, currently unguarded. Once we reached the garage, my car is in the northwest corner, Sarah explained as we hurried toward the elevator. I'll drive you to the FBI field office. James is already there, presenting the evidence. Hope blossomed in my chest. We might actually escape. We might actually stop this before it was too late. The elevator doors opened, revealing Maxim Volkov, a pistol held casually at his side. Dr. Chun, he said smoothly. I was wondering who had helped Mr. Wilson escape. I should have suspected the bleeding heart in the research division. Sarah froze, her body tense with fear. Inside, please, Volkov gestured with the gun. Both of you. We had no choice but to enter the elevator. Volkov followed, pressing the button for the lowest level, B3. You've been quite troublesome, Dr. Chen, Volkov said conversationally. Copying research files, helping intruders escape, and now attempting to remove our guest of honor before tomorrow's festivities. He sighed theatrically. Ms. Montgomery will be most displeased. Victoria doesn't understand what she's doing, I said desperately. Selective isn't stable. Even Dr. Mercer admits the results are inconsistent. Science is rarely perfect, Mrs. Montgomery, but 89% effectiveness is more than adequate for our purposes. The elevator stopped, and the doors opened onto a dimly lit concrete hallway. This way, please. He marched us down the corridor to a heavy metal door with a biometric lock. After scanning his fingerprint, the door swung open to reveal a room that looked more like a prison cell than a laboratory. Bare concrete walls, a single metal cot, a stainless steel toilet in the corner. "Your accommodations for the night," Volkov said, gesturing us inside. I apologize for the austerity, but our usual guest quarters are currently occupied by test subjects. "You won't get away with this," Sarah said, her voice surprisingly steady. "The FBI knows about Prometheus. They have evidence." "Evidence of what, exactly?" Volkov asked mildly. "A legitimate research facility developing cutting-edge medical treatments? By morning, that's all they'll find here. The sensitive materials are already being relocated." He checked his watch. "In 12 hours, Selective will be demonstrated, the contracts will be signed, and Prometheus will officially cease to exist." "And us?" I asked quietly. Volkov's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That depends entirely on tomorrow's shareholders' meeting, Mrs. Montgomery. Cooperate, and you'll be free to leave. Under certain conditions, of course. Refuse." He shrugged eloquently. "Well, grief can drive people to desperate acts." The implication was clear. If I didn't sign over control to Victoria, I wouldn't leave this facility alive. "What about Dr. Chen?" I pressed. "She's innocent in all this." A matter for Ms. Montgomery to decide. After all, Dr. Chen was her hire originally. With that ominous statement, Volkov backed out of the room. The door closed with a heavy thud, followed by the click of multiple locks engaging. Sarah and I were alone in the cell-like room, with no windows, no phone, and no hope of escape. "I'm sorry," Sarah said quietly. "I thought we could make it out." "It's not your fault," I assured her, sitting down on the edge of the metal cot. "You risked everything to help. And accomplished nothing," she said bitterly. "By this time tomorrow, Selective will be in the hands of people who will use it to commit genocide." "Not if the FBI gets here first," I pointed out. "James reached them. They're preparing a raid." "But Volkov said they're moving everything," Sarah countered. "By morning, the evidence will be gone." I thought for a moment. "Maybe not everything. You said the test subjects are still here, right? The people in the containment units we saw." She nodded slowly. "They can't move them easily. Most are too sick." "Then that's our evidence. Even if they clear out the research and the samples, they can't hide dozens of infected people." I stood up, new determination flowing through me. "We just need to stay alive until the FBI arrives." Sarah didn't look convinced. "And how do we do that?" "Victoria wants you to sign over the company tomorrow. If you refuse..." "I won't refuse," I said grimly. "I'll stall. The shareholders' meeting isn't until 9 a.m. The FBI will move before then if James got through to them. And if they don't..." I touched my watch, a plan forming in my mind. "Then I have a backup plan." Richard always did. Sleep was impossible in our concrete cell. Sarah and I took turns resting, though neither of us managed more than fitful dozing. We talked instead about her work, about Richard, about Victoria. "She wasn't always like this," I said softly, though I was no longer entirely convinced. "She was a bright, ambitious child, determined, strong-willed." "Sociopathic tendencies often manifest early as determination and charm," Sarah observed, then caught herself. "I'm sorry, that was insensitive." "But possibly accurate," I admitted. "I've been thinking about it all night. The signs were there. I just didn't want to see them." Sarah hesitated. For what it's worth, Victoria can be genuinely caring when she wants to be. When I first started at Prometheus, she took me under her wing. Mentored me. I thought she was brilliant and compassionate. Her expression darkened. Then I saw her authorize the first human tests without blinking an eye. Morning came, marked only by the brightening of the single overhead light and the arrival of a guard with a tray of bland food, toast, scrambled eggs, coffee in paper cups. "Eat," the guard instructed. "Ms. Montgomery will be here in 1 hour." After he left, Sarah picked at her food listlessly. "What's your plan?" "First, to get through the shareholders' meeting alive," I said, forcing myself to eat despite my churning stomach. "Then to make sure the FBI finds those test subjects, no matter what." Sarah nodded, her expression resolute. "I'll help however I can." An hour later, the door opened again. Victoria stood there, immaculately dressed in a charcoal Armani suit, her hair and makeup flawless. Behind her loomed Volkov and 2 guards. "Mother," she said coolly, "I trust you slept well?" "Wonderfully," I replied with equal ice. Nothing like concrete and fluorescent lighting for a good night's rest. A flicker of amusement crossed her face. "Your sarcasm remains intact."
Good.
"You'll need your wits about you today." She gestured to the guards. "Bring her. Dr. Chen stays here for now." "Victoria," I protested. "Sarah has nothing to do with this. Let her go." "Dr. Chen has everything to do with this," Victoria contradicted. She betrayed Prometheus. Her fate will be decided after the demonstration. She checked her watch, a diamond-encrusted Patek Philippe that probably cost more than most people's houses. "The shareholders are waiting, Mother. Shall we?" The guards escorted me from the cell, leaving Sarah behind. As the door closed, she caught my eye, her gaze steady and determined. Whatever happened, she wouldn't give up. Neither would I. Victoria led the way to an elevator different from the one we'd tried to escape through the night before. This one was wood-paneled and plush-carpeted, an executive elevator. "The meeting will proceed as follows," Victoria explained as we ascended. "You will announce your decision to step down as CEO, citing grief and the unexpected burden of leadership. You will endorse me as your successor. You will sign the prepared documents transferring your voting shares to a trust that I control." Her voice was crisp, businesslike. "In return, you will be allowed to retire to the villa in Tuscany with a generous monthly stipend." "And if I don't agree to this arrangement?" I asked, though I knew the answer. Victoria's smile was cold. "Then I'm afraid your grief will take a more tragic turn. Perhaps a suicide, overwhelmed by the loss of your husband. Or perhaps an accident like Daddy's." She shrugged elegantly. "Either way, the result is the same. I become CEO, and Prometheus continues uninterrupted." The elevator doors opened onto a private entrance to Montgomery Industries headquarters. We were back where this had all begun, the gleaming tower with our family name emblazoned at the top. "How did you get me here without anyone seeing?" I asked, disoriented by the sudden transition from prison cell to corporate headquarters. "Prometheus and Montgomery Industries are more connected than you realize," Victoria said with a hint of smugness. "There's a private tunnel system linking key facilities. Daddy had it built during the Cold War as a potential evacuation route. Quite useful for our purposes." We moved through empty executive corridors toward the boardroom. The building seemed unusually quiet for a workday morning. "Where is everyone?" I asked. "I declared a work-from-home day for all non-essential personnel," Victoria explained. "Given the sensitive nature of today's meeting, I thought it best to minimize witnesses." That was worrying. Fewer people meant fewer potential allies, and fewer obstacles if Victoria decided to enact her contingency plan for me. We reached the boardroom doors. Victoria paused, straightening my collar in a grotesque parody of maternal concern. "Remember, Mother, your performance determines whether you leave this building alive." She smiled thinly. "And whether Sarah Chin does as well." The door swung open to reveal the boardroom filled with shareholders and board members. At the far end of the table sat Martin Drake, looking smug, and Charles Bartlett, his expression carefully neutral. There was no sign of James Wilson. As we entered, conversations hushed. All eyes turned to us, the grieving widow and her dutiful daughter, reunited in their time of sorrow. If only they knew the truth. "Mrs. Montgomery," Bartlett rose, extending his hand. "Thank you for joining us during this difficult time." I ignored his hand, taking my seat at the head of the table. Victoria sat to my right, her posture perfect, her expression appropriately solemn. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bartlett addressed the room. "As you know, we've called this emergency meeting to address the leadership transition following Richard Montgomery's tragic passing. Mrs. Montgomery has graciously agreed to share her thoughts on the company's future." All eyes turned to me expectantly. This was it, the moment of truth. I needed to stall until the FBI raid, which might already be in progress at the Prometheus facility. But I also needed to appear cooperative enough that Victoria wouldn't enact her threats against me or Sarah. I rose slowly, my hands steady despite the fear coursing through me. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. The past week has been. I allowed my voice to break slightly. Overwhelming, to say the least. Losing Richard was the greatest tragedy of my life. Victoria nodded sympathetically beside me, the perfect, supportive daughter. I wondered how many people in this room knew what she really was. Richard left me controlling interest in Montgomery Industries because he trusted my judgment. I continued. But the truth is, I never expected to be in this position. I'm not a businesswoman. I'm not prepared to lead a multinational corporation. Murmurs of understanding rippled through the room. Victoria's expression remained carefully neutral, but I could see the triumph beginning to gleam in her eyes. However, I said, my voice strengthening, Richard also left me a sacred duty to protect his legacy and ensure this company continues to reflect the values upon which it was built. Integrity, innovation, responsibility. The murmurs died away. Victoria's smile faded slightly. Before I make any decisions about the future leadership of Montgomery Industries, I believe we must address some troubling discoveries I've made concerning one of our subsidiaries, Prometheus Research.
Victoria tens bisaid me.
Across the table, Bartlett's expression hardened. Mother, Victoria said quietly, a warning in her voice. This isn't the appropriate forum for technical discussions about research divisions. On the contrary, I countered, as the majority shareholder, I believe this is exactly the right forum. The shareholders deserve to know how their money is being spent. I looked around the table, making eye contact with each person. Prometheus was established 2 years ago as a biotechnology research subsidiary focused on petroleum extraction enzymes. At least, that's what the official documentation states. Mrs. Montgomery, Bartlett interrupted smoothly. These operational details are covered by multiple non-disclosure agreements. Perhaps we should move on to the leadership transition discussion. The leadership transition and Prometheus are directly connected, Mr. Bartlett, I said firmly. Because what Prometheus is actually developing isn't petroleum technology. It's biological weapons. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Victoria's face flushed with anger, her control slipping for the first time. That's absurd, Drake interjected. Mrs. Montgomery is clearly overwrought with grief. These allegations are completely unfounded. Are they? I challenged. Then you won't mind if I present evidence to the contrary. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the thumb drive I'd secretly copied from Richard's server, the drive I'd managed to conceal even when they took my purse. This contains internal Prometheus documents detailing the development of a pathogen called Selective, a bioweapon designed to target specific genetic markers. Victoria's hand clamped around my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. Mother, she hissed, you're making a terrible mistake. The mistake was thinking I could be threatened into silence. I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. The mistake was thinking I would choose my own safety over the lives of countless innocent people. What innocent people? Asked a shareholder, looking confused. What is she talking about? Nothing, Victoria said quickly. My mother is confused. Grief has affected her judgment. I'm not confused, I said firmly. I'm finally seeing clearly. Prometheus has been conducting illegal human experiments. People have died. And they plan to demonstrate their weapon today to potential buyers, foreign military interests willing to pay billions for undetectable biological warfare capability. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Several shareholders looked genuinely horrified. Others seemed skeptical. A few, those Victoria had likely already brought into her confidence, looked nervous. These are serious allegations, said an older woman I recognized as one of our longest-standing investors. Do you have proof beyond what's on that drive? The FBI has been notified, I said, deciding to lay all my cards on the table. They're raiding the Prometheus facility as we speak. They'll find all the proof they need, including human test subjects infected with the pathogen. Victoria's composure shattered. You stupid, interfering bitch, she snarled, forgetting her audience in her rage. You have no idea what you've done. Her outburst confirmed everything for the shocked shareholders. Several stood, moving toward the door, unwilling to be associated with whatever was unfolding. Bartlett moved quickly to damage control. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation for all of this. Mrs. Montgomery is understandably emotional after her loss. Stop lying, Charles. I cut him off. You're as deep in this as Victoria is. Richard found proof of your involvement before he died, before you had him killed. Gasps echoed around the room. The accusation of murder changed everything. This was no longer just a corporate scandal. It was a criminal conspiracy reaching to the highest levels of the company. Victoria stood abruptly, pulling out her phone. This meeting is adjourned. Security will escort everyone from the building immediately. On whose authority? I challenged, rising to face her. I am still the majority shareholder. I am still in charge. Not for long, she said, her voice deadly quiet. She pressed a button on her phone. Volkov, initiate contingency protocol.
Now.
The boardroom doors burst open. Instead of regular Montgomery Industries security, armed men in tactical gear swarmed in. Volkov's private security team. The shareholders cried out in alarm as the men surrounded the table, weapons drawn. Ladies and gentlemen, Volkov announced, entering behind his team. Due to a security threat, this building is now under lockdown. Please remain seated and follow all instructions. This is outrageous, shouted one of the board members. You can't hold us here against our will. I assure you, this is for your own protection, Volkov replied smoothly. There has been a terrorist threat against Montgomery Industries. We're simply following security protocols. It was a transparent lie, but backed by armed men. It didn't matter. The shareholders were effectively hostages now. Victoria turned to me, her expression triumphant once more. You should have taken the villa, Mother. Now everyone here will suffer for your stubbornness. The FBI is coming, I reminded her. You can't escape this. The FBI will find nothing at Prometheus, she said dismissively. The critical materials were relocated overnight. The test subjects have been disposed of, and by the time they think to look here, will be gone, along with our buyers and the demonstration samples. Horror washed over me. You moved the demonstration here? To corporate headquarters. The penthouse level has suitable facilities, Victoria confirmed. And it's the last place anyone would look for a bioweapons demonstration. She glanced at her watch. The buyers arrive in 30 minutes. After the demonstration, we'll leave the country on private jets. By the time the authorities put the pieces together, we'll be unreachable. And what about them? I nodded toward the terrified shareholders. Victoria's smile chilled my blood. Collateral damage. A tragic terrorist attack on a corporate headquarters. The perfect cover for our departure, and a field test of selective's effectiveness in an enclosed environment. She was planning to kill everyone in the building as a demonstration of her weapon's effectiveness. Dozens of innocent people murdered to impress her buyers and cover her escape. Victoria, I said, my voice breaking, these people have done nothing to you. Some of them have known you since you were a child. Business requires difficult decisions, Mother, she said coldly. You never understood that. Daddy never understood that. That's why Montgomery Industries stagnated while our competitors innovated. Mass murder isn't innovation, I countered. It's madness. She shrugged. History will decide. The buyers are paying $12 billion for exclusive rights to Selective. That kind of money rewrites morality. Volkov approached, speaking quietly to Victoria. The penthouse is secured. Dr. Mercer is preparing the demonstration. But there's a complication. The FBI has entered the building. My heart leapt. You see? It's over, Victoria. You can't escape. They're currently on the lobby level, Volkov continued, ignoring me. Standard response team, not tactical. They appear to be responding to an anonymous tip about financial irregularities, not a bioweapons threat. Victoria considered this. How many? 4 agents. Easily managed. Detain them, she ordered. Non-lethally for now. They may be useful as hostages if we need to negotiate our exit. Volkov nodded and spoke into his radio, issuing commands to his men on the lower levels. Victoria turned back to me. Now, Mother, you have a choice. Cooperate, and some of these people might survive today. Continue to resist, and I'll have selective released throughout the entire ventilation system. It was an impossible choice. Cooperate with mass murder and bioweapons proliferation, or risk the immediate deaths of everyone in the building. Before I could respond, my watch vibrated against my wrist, 3 short pulses, then a longer one. A signal. Richard's special feature hadn't been a distress beacon to security, as I'd thought. It was something else entirely. And whatever it was activating now. An explosion rocked the building, distant but powerful enough to make the boardroom windows rattle. Alarms began blaring throughout the building. What the hell was that? Victoria demanded, grabbing Volkov's arm. He pressed his earpiece, listening to reports from his men. Explosion in the parking garage. Multiple vehicles on fire. His expression darkened. And the FBI team is no longer responding. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered. It's a coordinated attack, Volkov realized. The FBI team was a diversion. Victoria's composure cracked completely.
How? Who?
A third explosion, directly below us now. The floor shook violently. Several shareholders screamed in panic. I knew, suddenly and with absolute certainty, what was happening. Richard's contingency plan wasn't just evidence gathering or legal maneuvering. It was much more direct. Montgomery Industries has a dedicated security team, I said quietly. Former special forces, personally loyal to Richard. He called them his insurance policy against corporate espionage. Victoria stared at me, realization dawning. The watch. I nodded. 3 clicks, then hold. Not a distress beacon, a signal to Richard's team that the company has been compromised at the highest levels. The building's PA system crackled to life. Attention all Montgomery Industries personnel. This is a code black security alert. The building has been compromised by hostile forces. Initiate Protocol Fortress immediately. This is not a drill. Volkov's men looked at each other nervously. They'd expected to control a corporate boardroom, not face a professional security team trained for exactly this scenario. Get the buyers here now, Victoria ordered Volkov. We need to complete the demonstration and leave immediately. The helipad may be compromised, he warned. Then we'll find another way out, she snapped. Secure the penthouse. Move the shareholders there as hostages. And bring my mother. She's our best leverage against Richard's security team. As Volkov's men began herding the terrified shareholders toward the executive elevator, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Richard had planned for this all along. He'd known Victoria might try to seize control by force. He'd created a failsafe that I'd unknowingly activated. Now I just had to stay alive long enough for his security team to reach us. Victoria grabbed my arm, dragging me toward a secondary elevator at the back of the boardroom, a private lift I hadn't known existed. You've ruined everything, she hissed as the doors closed behind us. Years of planning, billions in potential revenue. All destroyed because you couldn't mind your own business. Bioweapons and murder are my business, I replied steadily. You made them my business when you killed your father. The elevator ascended rapidly toward the penthouse level. Victoria kept a bruising grip on my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin hard enough to draw blood. You know what your problem is, Mother? You think small. You and Daddy both. All that power, all that wealth, and what did you do with it? Charity galas, hospital wings, scholarships for underprivileged children. She spat the words like curses. And what would you do with it? I asked. Kill people who don't fit your genetic preferences? Play God with selective pandemics. Create a better world, she countered. A world where disease, violence, and social unrest can be controlled precisely and effectively. Do you have any idea how many governments would pay trillions for that capability? You're talking about eugenics and genocide, I said, horrified. How did you become this person? For a moment, something like regret flickered across her face. I was always this person, Mother. You just never wanted to see it. The elevator doors opened onto the penthouse level. And now it's too late. The penthouse had been converted into a makeshift laboratory and demonstration space. Glass containment units lined one wall, smaller versions of what I'd seen at the Prometheus facility. Inside each was a test subject, unconscious or sedated, connected to monitoring equipment. Dr. Mercer stood at a central workstation, his face pale with stress. "Ms. Montgomery, we have a serious problem. The building's security systems are overriding our controls. Someone is trying to lock us out of the ventilation system." "Override it," Victoria ordered. "We need to be ready the moment the buyers arrive." "I'm trying," Mercer insisted. But whoever designed these security protocols was very thorough. They're anticipating every workaround. Richard. Again, Richard's foresight was protecting us from beyond the grave. He'd built in safeguards to prevent exactly this scenario, the weaponization of his company's infrastructure. A squad of Volkov's men arrived with the shareholders, herding them into a corner of the large space. They huddled together, terrified but alive. Bartlett and Drake stood apart, conferring urgently with Volkov. More explosions echoed from lower floors. The battle for control of the building was intensifying. "Where are the buyers?"
Victoria demanded.
Their helicopter was redirected by air traffic control, Volkov reported grimly. "Someone with significant authority has locked down the airspace around this building." "The FBI," I said, unable to keep the satisfaction from my voice. James Wilson reached them in time after all. Victoria's face contorted with rage. She stalked to a sleek metal case on a nearby table and snapped it open, revealing vials of clear liquid nestled in protective foam. "If I can't sell selective, I'll demonstrate its effectiveness for the whole world to see," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "The ultimate proof of concept." "Victoria, no." Dr. Mercer protested. "The aerosol dispersal system isn't connected. We can't control which genetic markers it targets in this environment." "I don't care," she snarled, lifting one of the vials. "Release it manually if you have to." "You'll kill everyone," Mercer argued. "Including yourself." "Not everyone," she countered. "Only those with susceptible genetic markers. The rest will become living testimonials to selective's effectiveness." The perfect advertisement. She was truly mad, willing to risk her own life on the gamble that her genetics would protect her from her own weapon. I had to stop her. Somehow, I had to reach whatever humanity might remain in my daughter before she committed mass murder. "Victoria," I said, stepping toward her cautiously. "This isn't who you are. This isn't who we raised you to be." "You have no idea who I am," she spat. "You never did." "I know you're my daughter," I said softly. "I know that once, you were a little girl who wanted to make her father proud, who dreamed of changing the world for the better." Something flickered in her eyes, a momentary hesitation. "It's not too late," I continued, taking another step closer. "You can stop this now. You can help us contain selective before it causes more harm." For a heartbeat, I thought I'd reached her. Then her expression hardened again. "Sentiment," she said dismissively. "Always your weakness, Mother." She turned to Mercer. "Prepare the manual dispersal system. If we can't control the building's ventilation, we'll create our own distribution method." As Mercer reluctantly moved to comply, the building shook with another explosion, this one much closer. The lights flickered, then stabilized. "They're coming," Volkov announced, checking the security feeds on a tablet. "Montgomery's security team has reached the 40th floor. They'll be here in minutes."
Victoria smiled coldly.
"Then we don't have much time." She handed the vial to Mercer. "Do it now." Dr. Mercer took the vial with shaking hands. "This is madness," he muttered, but fear of Victoria, or perhaps Volkov, compelled him to obey. I watched in horror as he attached the vial to a small device that looked like an oversized nebulizer. "Once activated, we'll have approximately 3 minutes before the aerosol reaches lethal concentration," he explained, his voice clinical despite the monstrous act he was about to commit. I had to act now or never. "Victoria," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "If you do this, you prove everything your father feared about you." That you're not just ambitious, you're evil." Her head snapped up, eyes flashing with rage. "Don't you dare invoke him now. He betrayed me. He was going to destroy everything I'd built. He was trying to save you," I cried. From becoming a mass murderer. From losing whatever humanity you have left." For a moment, just a moment, uncertainty flickered across her face. Then the penthouse doors burst open. Sarah Chin stood in the doorway, flanked by armed men in tactical gear bearing the Montgomery Industries logo. Behind them was James Wilson, his face grim but triumphant. "FBI, nobody move," shouted a voice from behind them as federal agents poured into the room, weapons trained on Volkov's men. Chaos erupted. Volkov's security team raised their weapons, but they were outgunned and surrounded. The shareholders screamed and ducked for cover. Drake tried to make a run for a side exit, but was quickly tackled by an FBI agent. In the confusion, Victoria lunged for the dispersal device, her intent clear. If she was going down, she would take as many people with her as possible. I moved without thinking, throwing myself at my daughter. We collided hard, both of us crashing to the floor. The vial of selective flew from her hand, arcing through the air in terrible slow motion. Sarah Chin dove for it, catching it inches from the floor. Relief flooded through me, until I saw Victoria draw a small pistol from beneath her jacket.
No!
I screamed as she aimed at Sarah. A single shot rang out. Victoria's body jerked, then went still, the pistol falling from her limp fingers. Blood blossomed across her charcoal Armani suit, spreading from her chest like a macabre flower. I turned to see Volkov lowering his weapon, his cold eyes meeting mine. "Loose ends," he said simply before being tackled and disarmed by FBI agents. I crawled to Victoria, cradling her head in my lap as her life ebbed away. Her eyes found mine, confusion and something like regret clouding them. "Mother," she whispered, blood bubbling at the corner of her mouth. "I only wanted to make history." "I know, sweetheart," I said through my tears, stroking her hair as I had when she was small. "I know." A strange peace settled over her features. Then she was gone, my daughter, my only child, dead in my arms. Around us, the FBI secured the penthouse, arresting Volkov, Bartlett, Drake, and a reluctant Dr. Mercer. The shareholders were evacuated, dazed but alive. Sarah carefully handed the vial of selective to hazmat-suited specialists who had arrived with the FBI. James Wilson knelt beside me, his face etched with sorrow. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry. We came as fast as we could." "You came in time," I said quietly, still holding Victoria's body. "That's what matters." "The FBI found the evidence at Prometheus," he explained gently. "Most of the research had been moved, but they discovered records, test subjects, enough to make a case. Senator Mitchell has already been taken into custody." I nodded, the words washing over me without truly registering. In that moment, all I could think about was the little girl who had once been my daughter, before ambition and something darker had twisted her into the woman who died in my arms. "What happens now?" asked, finally looking up at James. "Now," he said, helping me to my feet, "we rebuild. We honor Richard's legacy by making Montgomery Industries what it should be, a force for good." Sarah approached cautiously. "Mrs. Montgomery? The FBI needs to speak with you when you're ready. And thank you for saving my life." I looked around the penthouse, at the containment units with their innocent victims, at the vials of deadly pathogen being carefully secured, at my daughter's body being covered with a sheet. "I didn't save anyone," I said softly. I was too late for that. The months that followed passed in a blur of depositions, grand jury hearings, and endless meetings. The Prometheus scandal rocked the business world and dominated headlines for weeks. "Bioweapon heiress dies in FBI raid," screamed the tabloids. More reputable outlets focused on the broader conspiracy, the government officials implicated, the private military contractors exposed, the ethical failures at every level. Montgomery Industries survived, though not unscathed. Our stock plummeted initially, then gradually recovered as I implemented sweeping reforms. With James Wilson as my right hand, I dismantled Prometheus entirely and redirected its legitimate research toward actual medical applications. Dr. Sarah Chen led that effort, turning the horror she had witnessed into hope for the future. I buried Victoria beside her father in the Montgomery family plot, ignoring the whispers and judgment of those who thought she deserved no such honor. Whatever she had become, she had once been my child. That counted for something, at least to me. On the 1-year anniversary of Richard's death, I stood alone at his grave, placing flowers between his headstone and Victoria's. "I did what you asked," I said softly to Richard's grave. "I protected your legacy. I found the truth about Prometheus." My voice broke, but I couldn't protect our daughter, not even from herself. The autumn wind rustled the leaves above me, a melancholy sound that matched my mood. In the distance, I could see James waiting patiently by the car, giving me the privacy I needed for this moment. "I'm running the company now," I continued, smiling faintly at the absurdity of it. "The society wife you tried to shield from business has become a CEO. The board actually listens to me. Turns out I had more strength than either of us realized." I touched Victoria's headstone, tracing her name with my fingertips. I still don't understand how it happened. How our daughter became someone capable of such cruelty. Was it something we did? Something we failed to do? No answer came, of course. Just the wind and the silence of the dead. I stood, brushing leaves from my coat. "I'm selling the mansion," I told Richard's grave. "Too many ghosts. I've bought a smaller place in the city, close to the office. And I've established the Richard Montgomery Foundation for Ethical Research. Something good should come from all of this." As I walked back toward James and the waiting car, I felt a weight lifting, not disappearing, but becoming bearable. The Montgomery legacy had been tarnished but not destroyed. From the ashes of betrayal and heartbreak, something new was emerging. Not forgiveness. I wasn't there yet and might never be. But perhaps understanding. And with understanding, the first fragile shoots of peace. 5 years have passed since that fateful day in the Montgomery Industries penthouse. 5 years since I watched my only child die in my arms. 5 years of rebuilding, both the company and myself. The world has moved on, as it always does. The Prometheus scandal is now a case study in business ethics courses. Senator Mitchell is serving 20 years in federal prison for conspiracy and treason. Martin Drake turned state's evidence and received a reduced sentence. Charles Bartlett died awaiting trial. A heart attack, they said, though rumors of suicide persist. Maxim Volkov disappeared during transport to a high-security facility, likely extracted by former intelligence associates. He remains on international watch lists, a ghost haunting the edges of my nightmares. Dr. Mercer cooperated fully with authorities and received immunity in exchange for helping neutralize all samples of selective and ensuring the formula could never be recreated. The test subjects who survived were compensated generously from Montgomery Industries funds, small comfort for what they endured, but the best I could offer. Sarah Chen now heads our legitimate medical research division, focusing on targeted cancer treatments, the original, benevolent purpose of the technology Victoria perverted. She visits me occasionally for dinner, a tentative friendship born from shared trauma. As for me, I remain CEO of Montgomery Industries, to everyone's surprise, including my own. The society wife, the grieving widow, the bereaved mother, transformed by tragedy into a formidable business leader. The financial press calls it my remarkable reinvention. I call it survival. I never remarried, never even dated. The holes left by Richard and Victoria are too vast to fill. Instead, I threw myself into philanthropy and corporate reform, determined that the Montgomery name would stand for something positive again. The Richard Montgomery Foundation for Ethical Research has become one of the most respected organizations of its kind, funding innovations that prioritize human welfare over profit. The Montgomery Scholarship for Disadvantaged Youth puts brilliant, deserving students through college each year. These are my attempts at atonement, though I'm not entirely sure what I'm atoning for. Blindness, perhaps.
Naivety.
The failure to see what was happening in my own family until it was too late. Today, I'm hosting a charity gala at the new Montgomery Tower, a sleek, sustainable building that replaced the old headquarters after I had it demolished. Too many ghosts, too many memories. The new tower features cutting-edge green technology and a public atrium dedicated to scientific education. Richard would have approved. I stand at the window of my office, 40 stories above the city, watching guests arrive in their finery. Board members, business associates, politicians who've passed my rigorous ethical screening. And James Wilson, of course, now CFO and my most trusted advisor. Some gossip about a romance between us, but the truth is simpler and more profound. We are bound by shared trauma and mutual respect. Some bonds are stronger than romance. A knock at my door interrupts my thoughts. Mrs. Montgomery? It's my assistant, a capable young woman named Lily. The first guests are arriving, and there's someone here who wasn't on the list, a Mr. Callahan? He says it's urgent. I frown. The name means nothing to me. Did he say what it's regarding? Only that it concerns Victoria. He was quite insistent. My heart stutters at my daughter's name. 5 years, and it still feels like a physical blow to hear it. Send him up, I say after a moment's hesitation, but have security on standby. Minutes later, a man enters my office, mid-30s, conventionally handsome, with intelligent eyes and an expensive suit that doesn't quite hide his military bearing. Ex-Special Forces, if I had to guess. Mrs. Montgomery, he says, extending his hand. Michael Callahan. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. You mentioned my daughter, I reply, shaking his hand briefly before retreating behind my desk. That's the only reason you're here instead of being escorted out by security. He smiles slightly.
Direct.
I appreciate that. He places a sleek attaché case on my desk. I represent certain interests who were involved with your daughter's work at Prometheus. My blood chills. Prometheus was dismantled 5 years ago. All research was destroyed or redirected to legitimate medical applications. The official research, yes, Callahan agrees smoothly. But Victoria was more thorough than you realize. She maintained a private archive, insurance, she called it. Insurance against what? Against exactly what happened. The project's exposure. Her death. His eyes hold mine steadily. Victoria anticipated every possibility, Mrs. Montgomery, including her own failure. I sit down slowly, the weight of his words settling over me. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying that Selective wasn't Prometheus's only project, or even its most important one. He opens the attaché case and removes a tablet, which he places in front of me. This contains evidence of Project Renaissance, Victoria's true masterwork. I don't touch the tablet. Why bring this to me now, after 5 years? Because the timetable has accelerated. Victoria's contingency protocols have activated. He leans forward, his casual demeanor falling away. Mrs. Montgomery, your daughter built a backdoor into Selective, a secondary pathogen designed to remain dormant for precisely 5 years before activating. Horror washes over me. That's impossible. All samples were destroyed, Dr. Mercer assured us. Dr. Mercer knew only what Victoria wanted him to know. Callahan interrupts. The demonstration 5 years ago wasn't just for potential buyers. It was the actual deployment. My mind races, trying to process the implications. The people in the penthouse, the shareholders, were exposed to microscopic doses of a modified version of Selective, as were the FBI agents, Montgomery security personnel, and you. His expression remains unnervingly calm. The active agent was designed to integrate with host DNA, remaining inert until triggered by a specific environmental catalyst. What catalyst? I demand, my voice barely above a whisper. That's the elegant part. Victoria engineered it to activate on the 5th anniversary of deployment. That date is 3 days from now. I stand abruptly, anger overriding fear. This is absurd. If what you're saying is true, why would Victoria expose herself to this agent? She died in that penthouse. Yes, she did. Callahan agrees. But that was never part of her plan. Volkov's betrayal was unexpected. Betrayal? I echo. Volkov worked for Victoria. Volkov worked for whoever paid him most. Callahan's mouth twists. When the raid happened, he calculated his best odds of survival and acted accordingly. Victoria became an expedient sacrifice. I paced to the window and back, my mind whirling. Why are you telling me this? What do these interests you represent want? They want what Victoria promised them, control of the Renaissance Protocol. The ability to determine who lives and who dies when the pathogen activates. He leans back, studying me. I'm telling you, because you have something they need. Access to Victoria's private server. I know nothing about any private server. I protest. Don't you? He activates the tablet, bringing up a familiar image. Victoria's shattered tiara. The one she left on my doorstep the day of the will reading. Victoria was always theatrical. The tiara wasn't just a threat. It was a key. Understanding dawns, sickening in its clarity. The broken pieces, they form a pattern, don't they? A password or access code. Callahan nods. Combined with your biometrics, retinal scan, fingerprints, voice pattern. Victoria ensured that only you could access Renaissance if she died. Her final insurance policy. And if I refuse to help these interests you represent. His smile is thin. Then in 3 days, every person exposed in that penthouse will die, including you, and thousands more who've had contact with the original carriers. The secondary pathogen is transmissible through prolonged close contact, not casual exposure, but family members, close colleagues. My throat constricts with horror. James Wilson, Sarah Chun, the board members who survived, their families, a cascading wave of death, all engineered by my daughter from beyond the grave. Why would Victoria do this? I whisper, though I already know the answer. Revenge. Control. Power. Even in death. Victoria believed in contingencies, Callahan says simply. And she never accepted failure as final. He stands, adjusting his cuffs. You have 3 days, Mrs. Montgomery. My employers require access to the Renaissance Protocol by then. Or everyone dies. I finish grimly. Not everyone, he corrects. Only those Victoria selected. A demonstration of Selective's true potential, precision culling of a population without mass casualties. Quite revolutionary from a certain perspective. From the perspective of monsters, I snap. He shrugs. Revolutionary advances rarely come from the gentle or the kind. He hands me a business card with only a phone number. When you're ready to cooperate, call this number. No police, no FBI. My employers have resources you can't imagine and contingencies of their own. After he leaves, I sit motionless at my desk, the tablet and business card before me like toxic artifacts. Below, the charity gala continues. Elegant people in elegant clothes raising money for worthy causes, utterly unaware of the sword hanging over their heads. I should call the FBI immediately. But what if Callahan is telling the truth? What if involving authorities triggers some failsafe in Victoria's twisted plan? I need time to think, to investigate. And I need help. I reach for my phone and text James Wilson. Need to see you urgently. My office.
Now.
While waiting, I activate the tablet Callahan left. It contains technical documents about Project Renaissance, most beyond my scientific understanding, but the broad strokes are clear enough. Victoria had indeed created a secondary pathogen, one that integrates with host DNA and remains dormant until activated. The activation catalyst appears to be a specific radio frequency broadcast, scheduled for automatic transmission from multiple locations around the globe in 3 days' time. My daughter had planned her revenge with meticulous care. Even in death, she would have the last word unless I can stop it. James arrives, concern etched on his face. Eleanor? What's wrong? The gala is about to start. I lock the door behind him. The gala can wait. We have a much bigger problem. I explain Callahan's visit and the contents of the tablet, watching James's expression shift from confusion to horror. This can't be real, he says when I finish. It's some kind of elaborate extortion scheme. I thought so too initially, I admit. But look at this. I show him the technical documents. These are legitimate. The science matches what we know about selective, but with modifications consistent with Victoria's approach. This is her work. James paces the office, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. Even if it's real, how do we find this private server? The tiara, do you still have it? I nod. In the safe in my apartment. I kept it as a reminder. Of what? Of what happens when love blinds you to the truth. I gather my coat and purse. We need to go now. The gala can proceed without us. James finishes. I'll make your excuses. A sudden migraine. Very believable for someone who's been working 18-hour days preparing for this event. We take my private elevator to the underground parking garage, maintaining casual conversation in case of surveillance. Only when we're in my car, driving toward my apartment in the exclusive riverfront district, do we speak freely again. We should contact Sarah Chun, James suggests. If anyone can understand the science behind this, it's her. And risk exposing her to danger if Callahan's employers are watching? I shake my head. Not yet. First, we need to verify whether the server actually exists. My apartment occupies the top floor of a renovated historic building with state-of-the-art security and a private elevator. I'd chosen it for precisely these features after selling the mansion, a fortress disguised as a luxury residence. Inside, I go directly to the study and open the wall safe hidden behind a seemingly solid bookshelf. Among the important documents and family heirlooms sits the velvet box containing Victoria's broken tiara. I place it on my desk, opening it carefully. The shattered pieces gleam under the desk lamp, platinum and diamonds, a princess's crown broken in a fit of rage. Or so I'd thought. What are we looking for exactly? James asks, studying the fragments. A pattern. A code. Victoria was always drawn to puzzles and ciphers. I arranged the pieces on the desk, trying different configurations. When she was 10, Richard gave her a complex puzzle box for her birthday. It took her 3 days to solve it. When she finally opened it, she was almost disappointed. The challenge had been more exciting than the reward. James picks up one of the larger fragments. These breaks aren't random. They're too clean, too precise.
He's right.
Looking closer, I can see that each piece has been deliberately cut, not shattered in anger as I'd assumed. Victoria had planned this from the beginning. The dramatic gesture of the broken tiara on my doorstep serving dual purposes as both threat and encrypted key. We spend hours arranging and rearranging the pieces, trying to discern the pattern Victoria had embedded. It's nearly dawn when James suddenly sits up straight. Eleanor, look. He's arranged the fragments in a seemingly random pattern, but when viewed from above, they form a distinctive shape. The Montgomery Industries logo intertwined with what appears to be a DNA helix. That's it. I breathe, recognizing my daughter's flair for the dramatic. But what does it mean? How does this translate to server access? James takes a photo of the arrangement with his phone. It's not the arrangement itself, it's the negative space between the pieces.
Look.
He digitally inverts the image, and suddenly I see it. Numbers and letters appearing in the spaces between fragments. An IP address and access code. I realize. Victoria always did love hiding things in plain sight. James looks troubled. This still doesn't solve the biometric requirements Callahan mentioned. Retinal scan, fingerprints, voice pattern, that requires specialized equipment. Not necessarily. I say slowly, a memory surfacing. After Richard died, Victoria installed new security features at the mansion. Biometric locks on her private wing. I never used them, had them removed after everything. But they would have captured my biometrics during installation testing. So Victoria had your biometric data all along, James concludes grimly. She planned for every contingency, including using you as her posthumous accomplice. I feel violated all over again. My own daughter, harvesting my biological identifiers for her contingency plans. Using me, even from beyond the grave. We need to access that server, I decide. Not to help Callahan's employers, but to find out exactly what Renaissance is and how to stop it.
How?
We have the IP address and access code, but without the proper equipment. Victoria wouldn't have made it impossible. I interrupt. Difficult, yes, but not impossible. She would have wanted me to find it eventually. It was all part of her game. I paced the study, thinking like my daughter. Where would Victoria hide a secure server that only I could access? Somewhere connected to both of us. Somewhere personal. The crypt, I say suddenly. The Montgomery family mausoleum. Victoria is buried there, alongside Richard. James looks skeptical. A server in a mausoleum? It's a bit gothic, even for Victoria. It's exactly her style, I counter. Dramatic, symbolic, and the last place anyone would look. The mausoleum was renovated after Victoria's death. I insisted on it. She's in the newest wing, with updated electrical systems for the climate control and security features. Features you specified, James realizes. Did you oversee the renovation personally? No, I was too grief-stricken. I left the details too. My voice trails off as another piece falls into place. To Howard Mitchell's architectural firm, before his arrest, Victoria's godfather. James's expression darkens. The same Howard Mitchell who was part of the Prometheus conspiracy. Victoria could have easily arranged for special modifications during the renovation, I conclude. Hidden infrastructure. A secure room. The perfect hiding place for her contingency server. We leave immediately for Oakwood Cemetery, where generations of Montgomerys rest in a sprawling neoclassical mausoleum on a private hillside. The dawn light casts long shadows as we approach the imposing structure, its marble facade gleaming coldly in the early morning. I use my key to unlock the ornate iron gates, then the heavy main doors. Inside, the air is cool and still, scented with marble dust and the faint sweetness of decay. Our footsteps echo as we make our way to the newest wing, where Richard and Victoria's ornate tombs face each other across a small chamber. What exactly are we looking for? James whispers, his voice unnaturally loud in the silence. Anything unusual. A hidden panel, a disguised access point. I run my hands along the smooth marble walls, searching for irregularities. Victoria would have made it subtle, but accessible. We search methodically, checking every panel, every decorative element. Nothing. The mausoleum remains stubbornly, oppressively ordinary, just a beautiful tomb for the dead. Frustrated, I stand before Victoria's final resting place. Her name is etched in the marble, along with her birth and death dates. Below is the epitaph I chose. Beloved daughter. Complex legacy. Victoria, I murmur, touching the cold stone. Where did you hide it? As if in answer, my fingers detect a slight depression in the marble, barely perceptible, but definitely there. I press gently, and a small panel slides open, revealing a biometric scanner. Found it, I breathe. James hurries to my side. Are you sure you want to do this? Once we access the server, we might be traceable. We don't have a choice, I remind him. 3 days, James. 3 days until Victoria's final revenge activates. I place my hand on the scanner. A green light passes over my palm, then extends to scan my retina. Finally, a small speaker emerges. Voice authentication required, says a computerized version of Victoria's voice, sending chills down my spine. Eleanor Montgomery. I say clearly. Mother of Victoria. The panel slides fully open, revealing a hidden door behind Victoria's tomb. It swings inward silently, exposing a small, climate-controlled room humming with electronics. At its center stands a sleek server rack, lights blinking steadily. My God, James whispers. She really did it. We enter cautiously. The room contains not only the server, but also a workstation with a high-resolution monitor, keyboard, and what appears to be specialized medical equipment. The walls are lined with backup power supplies and cooling systems, everything needed to maintain the server indefinitely. The monitor activates as we approach, displaying a login screen with the Montgomery Industries logo intertwined with a DNA helix, the same pattern we discovered in the tiara fragments. I enter the access code from the tiara arrangement, and the screen changes to display a video file. Victoria's face appears, recorded shortly before her death. My heart contracts painfully at the sight of her, alive, vibrant, utterly remorseless. "Hello, Mother," Video Victoria says with a small smile. "If you're watching this, then several things have happened. I'm dead. Prometheus has been exposed. And someone has told you about Renaissance." I grip the edge of the desk, steadying myself against the shock of hearing her voice again. "Renaissance isn't what they think it is," Victoria continues. "It's not just a failsafe or a revenge protocol. It's evolution, controlled, directed evolution. The secondary pathogen isn't designed primarily to kill. It's designed to enhance." James and I exchange confused glances. Selective was crude, a first-generation bioweapon with limited applications. Renaissance is transformative. The dormant pathogen rewrites specific genetic sequences, activating latent human potential. Increased intelligence, disease resistance, extended lifespan, the future of humanity, encoded in a virus. Victoria leans closer to the camera, her eyes intense. "But power like this can't be distributed randomly. It requires direction.
Control.
The activation signal will trigger enhancement in some hosts and termination in others, based on genetic factors I've predetermined. A genetic sorting algorithm, if you will." My stomach turns at the casual way she discusses mass murder and forced genetic modification. This is eugenics on an unprecedented scale, Victoria appointing herself arbiter of human evolution. "The people who've contacted you, Callahan and his employers, they believe Renaissance is simply a more sophisticated version of selective. They want it as a weapon. They don't understand its true purpose." She smiles coldly. "But you do now, Mother. And that gives you a choice." Victoria sits back, her expression softening slightly. "You can destroy this server and the activation protocol with it. The dormant pathogen will remain just that, dormant, harmless. Everyone lives, unchanged. Status quo maintained." She pauses, letting the options sink in. "Or you can allow Renaissance to proceed as I designed it. Yes, some will die, those whose genetic makeup is incompatible with the enhancement protocol. But those who survive will be the first generation of a new human species.
Homo sapiens superior."
My daughter, playing God from beyond the grave. I feel physically ill. "You have the administrator access to modify the protocol parameters," Victoria continues. "You could save everyone exposed in the penthouse, including yourself and your precious James Wilson. You could target only those who truly deserve evolutionary advancement." Her expression hardens again. "Or you could destroy it all and condemn humanity to its slow, chaotic, natural evolution. The choice, for once, is yours." The video ends, leaving us in stunned silence. "She's insane," James says finally. "Was insane. Brilliant and insane," I correct quietly. "The most dangerous combination." I study the server interface, now displayed on the monitor. "We need to shut this down. Completely." "Can we?" James asks. "If the pathogen is already dormant in hosts, in us, will destroying the server prevent activation?" According to Victoria, yes. Without the activation signal, the pathogen remains inert. I navigate through the system, searching for the activation protocol. The question is whether she was telling the truth, or if this is just another layer of her game. The interface is complex but intuitive, designed for me to understand despite my limited technical knowledge. I find the activation protocol quickly, a scheduled broadcast from 7 locations worldwide, timed to create a coverage pattern encompassing major population centers across all continents. She wasn't targeting just those in the penthouse, I realized with growing horror. The demonstration was merely patient zero. The pathogen has been spreading for 5 years, person to person, quietly, undetectably. "How many people?" James asks hoarsely. I check the infection metrics. According to this, millions. Possibly billions by now. The transmission rate is slow but steady, prolonged close contact only, but over 5 years. "Eleanor," James says urgently, "we need to call the authorities. The CDC, the WHO, someone." "And tell them what?" That my dead daughter engineered a global genetic modification virus that's been spreading undetected for 5 years? That in 3 days it will either kill or enhance a significant portion of the world's population. They'd think we're insane. I shake my head. Even if they believed us, what could they do in 3 days? They could try to locate and disable the broadcast stations, James suggests. Without knowing exactly what we're dealing with, it could trigger a failsafe. Victoria would have anticipated interference. I continue examining the system, looking for a definitive shutdown protocol. She said I have administrator access to modify parameters. That means I can change who lives and who dies when the signal activates. Or you can prevent the signal entirely, James insists. There must be a way to abort the whole process. I find it finally, a complete system shutdown option. But it's protected by additional security, a DNA sample from Victoria herself. She thought of everything, I say grimly. The final shutdown requires Victoria's DNA. She assumed I wouldn't have access to that after her death. But we do, James points out. She's literally right outside this room. I shake my head. Disturbing her remains would be a desecration. And likely futile. Embalming chemicals would have degraded the DNA beyond usefulness. Then what? We can't just let this happen. I stare at the screen, at the millions of lives hanging in the balance. Victoria has forced an impossible choice upon me, become complicit in her monstrous plan by selecting who lives and who dies, or stand by helplessly as the protocol activates according to her specifications. Unless there's a third option, I say slowly. Victoria said I could modify the parameters. What if I modify them to ensure everyone survives? Change the activation signal to trigger only the enhancement protocol, not the termination sequence. Is that possible? James asks. Would the system allow such a fundamental change? I have administrator access. And Victoria always did underestimate me. I begin navigating through the parameter settings, searching for the termination protocols. She assumed I'd either destroy everything or choose who lives and dies. She never considered I might choose to save everyone. The termination protocols are complex but not impenetrable. With James's help, I methodically modify each parameter, disabling the lethal aspects of the activation signal while maintaining the enhancement elements. It's slow, painstaking work, requiring both scientific understanding and intuitive leaps about Victoria's thinking. Hours pass as we work, the weight of billions of lives pressing down on us. Finally, the system accepts the modified parameters. The activation signal will still broadcast in 3 days, but according to the simulation models, it will trigger only genetic enhancements, not terminations. Is it enough? James asks, exhaustion evident in his voice. Can we trust the system? Trust Victoria's claims about what Renaissance actually does. We have no choice, I reply, equally exhausted. But we're not finished. Victoria said there were people who wanted Renaissance as a weapon. Callahan and his employers. They'll come looking for us when I don't call the number he provided. We need to prepare, James agrees. They won't simply accept that we've modified the protocol. I glance at my watch, nearly noon. We've been working for hours. We should create a backup of the modified protocol first, then establish some insurance of our own. Using the system's tools, we create an encrypted backup of the Renaissance protocol with our modifications. I transfer it to a secure drive, which I place in my purse. Now for insurance, I say grimly. Victoria wasn't the only one who could plan contingencies. I access the communications system built into the server and compose a message detailing everything: Prometheus, Selective, Renaissance, Victoria's plan, and our modifications. I attach the technical documentation and video evidence. This will be sent automatically to the FBI, CDC, WHO, and major news outlets if we don't enter a confirmation code every 12 hours, I explained to James. If Callahan's people come after us, at least the truth will be known. Will it be enough to stop them? It won't have to be, I say, a plan forming in my mind. Because we're going to give them exactly what they want, with a few modifications they won't discover until it's too late. We spend another hour creating a decoy version of the Renaissance protocol, one that appears to match Victoria's original specifications but actually contains the same non-lethal modifications we made to the real version. This decoy will be what we offer Callahan. What about the broadcasts? James asks as we prepare to leave. The activation signal will still go out in 3 days. And only trigger the enhancement protocol, not the termination sequence, I remind him. If Victoria was telling the truth about Renaissance's capabilities, we may have just given humanity the greatest gift in its history. If she was lying, I don't finish the thought. The possibility that we've missed something, that the modified protocol might still cause harm, is too terrible to contemplate. We exit the hidden server room, sealing it behind us. As the panel slides closed and once again becomes indistinguishable from Victoria's tomb, I place my hand on the cold marble. Even in death, you force impossible choices, I murmur to my daughter's remains. But this time, I choose a different path than the one you laid out for me. Outside the mausoleum, the day has progressed to early afternoon. The cemetery is quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to the existential crisis we've spent the morning addressing. We're halfway to my car when James suddenly stops. "Eleanor," he says quietly, "we're being watched." I follow his subtle nod toward a black SUV parked on the winding cemetery road, its windows tinted beyond legal limits. Callahan's employers, already monitoring us. They won't move against us here, I say with more confidence than I feel. Too public, too many potential witnesses. They don't need to, James points out. They just need to follow us to the server. Which they've already missed. We need to split up, I decide. You take my car. Lead them away from here. I'll call a rideshare and meet you at the office. James looks reluctant. I don't like leaving you alone. I'll be safer alone. They're more likely to follow the car they know belongs to me. I hand him my keys. Go. I'll be fine. After a moment's hesitation, he nods, taking the keys and walking briskly toward my car. I turn in the opposite direction, toward a different cemetery exit, pulling out my phone to call a car. As predicted, the black SUV's engine starts as James drives away in my vehicle. They follow him, unaware that their real target, me, with a backup drive, is heading in the opposite direction. The rideshare arrives quickly. I direct the driver to take me not to the office, but to my attorney's office downtown. If Callahan's employers are monitoring standard locations like my home and workplace, I need to be unpredictable. My attorney, Patricia Winters, is surprised to see me without an appointment, but makes time immediately. In her private office, I hand her a sealed envelope containing a thumb drive and written instructions. If anything happens to me in the next week, I tell her, open this immediately and follow the instructions precisely. Lives depend on it, Patricia. Many lives. To her credit, she doesn't ask questions beyond what's professionally necessary. As one of the city's most respected attorneys, Patricia has handled delicate matters for powerful clients before. She secures the envelope in her firm's vault and promises to honor my wishes. My next stop is the office, where I find James waiting anxiously in my private conference room. Did you lose them? I ask without preamble. He nods. Led them on a tour of the financial district, then switched cars in the underground parking at Hamilton Plaza. Security there owes me a favor. He runs a hand through his disheveled hair. What's our next move? We call Callahan, I say, pulling out the business card. We give him what he thinks he wants. James looks skeptical. You think they'll just accept the decoy protocol? They'll verify it, of course. But the decoy will pass any technical inspection. The modifications we made aren't visible without running the actual protocol. I reach for the phone. They'll only discover the truth when the activation signal broadcasts in 3 days, by which time the truth will be public knowledge anyway. I dial the number on Callahan's card. He answers on the first ring. Mrs. Montgomery. I was beginning to worry. I have what you're looking for, I say without preamble. The Renaissance protocol, accessed and ready for transfer. A pause. That was expedient. May I ask how you located it so quickly? My daughter left clearer instructions than you might have expected. I reply coolly. She wanted me to find it eventually. I see. He sounds thoughtful. And you're willing to simply hand it over? That seems out of character, based on my research into you. I'm a practical woman, Mr. Callahan. I have no desire to die in 3 days, nor to watch my colleagues and friends die. If your employers want Renaissance, they can have it, in exchange for my continued survival and that of those I care about. Another pause, longer this time. A reasonable position. We should meet to make the exchange. Somewhere private. Not too private, I counter. I've taken precautions, Mr. Callahan. If anything happens to me or to James Wilson, certain information will be automatically released to authorities worldwide. A soft chuckle. Also practical. Very well. The Montgomery Foundation Gallery at 8 p.m. tonight. Public enough for safety, private enough for our business. Agreed. After hanging up, I turn to James. We have until 8 p.m. to prepare. Let's make sure our insurance policy is airtight. We spend the afternoon strengthening our contingency plans. I contact Sarah Chen, explaining enough of the situation for her to be on alert without endangering her with too much knowledge. I arrange for Montgomery Industries Security, the same team that had responded to Richard's signal 5 years ago, to maintain discreet surveillance on the gallery. At 7:30 p.m., James and I arrive at the Montgomery Foundation Gallery, a modern art space funded by my philanthropic foundation. It's after hours, but as the primary benefactor, I have unrestricted access. We've chosen this location carefully, public enough to deter violence, filled with security cameras, yet private enough for our clandestine exchange. Callahan arrives precisely at 8 p.m., accompanied by 2 men whose expensive suits don't quite conceal their military bearing. His employers are taking no chances. Mrs. Montgomery. Mr. Wilson. Callahan nods politely. Thank you for your cooperation. Let's be clear about something, Mr. Callahan, I say, maintaining a calm I don't entirely feel. I'm not doing this out of cooperation. I'm doing it because you've left me no choice. He smiles thinly. The precise motivations are irrelevant. Do you have the protocol? I remove a sleek external drive from my purse, the decoy we prepared. Everything your employers need to access and control Renaissance. The full activation protocols, broadcast coordinates, all of it. Callahan gestures to one of his companions, who steps forward with a specialized tablet. If you don't mind, we'll verify the contents before concluding our business. By all means. The man connects our drive to his tablet, running what appears to be a sophisticated verification program. I maintain a neutral expression, confident in our decoy's ability to pass inspection. After several tense minutes, he nods to Callahan. It's legitimate. Full protocol access, administrative controls, broadcast parameters. He disconnects the drive and hands it to Callahan. Exactly what we were promised. Callahan pockets the drive, his expression satisfied. Well done, Mrs. Montgomery. Your cooperation will be remembered. He checks his watch. The activation signal broadcasts in approximately 60 hours. I suggest you spend that time with those you care about, those who might be genetically compatible with Renaissance's enhancement protocol. And those who aren't? I ask coldly. He shrugs. Evolution has always involved natural selection. Victoria merely accelerated and directed the process. He turns to leave, then pauses. For what it's worth, I believe you and Mr. Wilson will both survive the activation. Victoria spoke highly of your genetic resilience. How comforting, I replied dryly. After Callahan and his men depart, James and I remain in the gallery, surrounded by beautiful art that suddenly seems trivial in the face of what's coming. Do you think they believed it? James asks quietly. They believed what their verification program told them. I answer. Whether that's enough remains to be seen. And in 3 days? I move to the gallery window, looking out at the city lights. In 3 days, we'll know if Victoria was telling the truth about Renaissance. If the modified protocol works as intended. If we saved the world or merely postponed its reckoning. James stands beside me, his shoulder brushing mine in quiet solidarity. Whatever happens, you did everything possible. More than anyone could have asked. Did I? I turn to face him. I raised Victoria. I missed or ignored every warning sign. I failed to see what she was becoming until it was too late. Whatever happens in 3 days, that responsibility is still mine. No, he says firmly. Victoria made her choices. Richard made his. You're making yours now, choosing to save lives rather than control them. That's the difference between you and Victoria. That's always been the difference. I don't reply, but I allow myself to lean slightly against his steady presence. Tomorrow we'll need to prepare for every possibility. We'll need to alert Sarah Chen and the medical team we've assembled quietly over the last hours. We'll need to monitor Callahan and his employers, ensuring they don't discover our deception before the broadcast. But tonight, for this moment, I permit myself a sliver of hope. Hope that my daughter's final legacy might, through our intervention, become something other than mass destruction. Hope that from the ashes of betrayal and heartbreak, something miraculous might emerge. The 3 days pass in a blur of preparation, anticipation, and dread. Sarah Chen and her team work around the clock, preparing to monitor the activation's effects on a select group of volunteers, all exposed in the penthouse 5 years ago, all potentially carrying the dormant Renaissance pathogen. I receive no further contact from Callahan or his employers. Whether they've discovered our deception or are simply focused on their own preparations, I can't tell. The uncertainty is another weight to carry. On the morning of the broadcast, I gather with James, Sarah, and our medical team in a secured Montgomery Industries facility. The volunteers, board members, and executives who survived the penthouse incident wait nervously in observation rooms, monitored by advanced medical equipment. The first broadcast begins in 5 minutes, Sarah announces, checking the countdown we've synchronized with Victoria's protocol. Neurological monitoring is active for all subjects. If Renaissance does what Victoria claimed, we should see changes in brain activity almost immediately. I nod, my throat too tight for words. In research facilities around the world, similar scenes are playing out. Scientists and medical professionals whom I've quietly contacted, preparing to document whatever happens when Victoria's signal activates. 1 minute, Sarah says, her voice tense. James takes my hand, squeezing gently. Whatever happens, we face it together. Broadcast initiated, Sarah reports as the countdown reaches 0. On the monitors, we watch the vital signs of our volunteers. For several agonizing minutes, nothing happens. Then, one by one, their brain activity begins to change, subtle shifts in patterns, increased activity in regions associated with cognitive function. It's working, Sarah whispers, her scientific detachment momentarily forgotten. The enhancement protocol is activating without the termination sequence. Over the next hour, we observe remarkable changes in our volunteers. Cognitive tests show immediate improvements in problem-solving abilities, memory retention, and processing speed. Physical examinations reveal enhanced cellular regeneration and immune response. It's exactly as Victoria described, Sarah says, reviewing the data. Renaissance is rewriting specific genetic sequences, activating latent potential in the human genome. And, with the termination protocol disabled, everyone survives, I finish. Everyone enhances. Reports begin flowing in from our contacts worldwide. Similar results everywhere.
No des. No adverse reactions.
Only enhancement, spreading gradually through the population as the 7 broadcast stations activate in sequence around the globe. It should be a moment of triumph. We've averted Victoria's culling while preserving the positive aspects of her creation. Yet I feel no joy, only a profound weariness and lingering dread. What have we done? I murmur to James as we watch the monitors. We've fundamentally altered humanity, without consent. Is that any better than what Victoria planned? We preserved life, he reminds me gently. We chose the path of least harm in an impossible situation. Before I can respond, my phone rings, an unknown number. With a sense of foreboding, I answer. Impressive, Mrs. Montgomery. Callahan's voice, smooth as ever. You managed to modify the protocol without disrupting its basic functionality. My employers are divided in their reaction. How did you know? I ask, though the answer is obvious. The termination sequence failed to activate. The verification program detected no issues, which means you altered the protocol at a fundamental level, beyond what the program was designed to detect. He sounds almost admiring. A bold move. What happens now? I ask, bracing for threats.
Now. He chuckles softly.
Now we adapt, as humans always have. Renaissance has been released into the wild, so to speak. The enhancement is spreading exactly as Victoria designed, just without the selective culling my employers anticipated. And that's acceptable to them? As I said, opinions are divided. Some see it as a setback. Others recognize the potential in a universally enhanced population. A pause. I've been authorized to inform you that there will be no reprisals. The situation has evolved beyond simple revenge. Just like that, I can't keep the skepticism from my voice. Evolution favors adaptation, Mrs. Montgomery. My employers are nothing if not adaptable. I hear voices in the background of his call. I should go. History is being made, and there are preparations to consider. After he hangs up, I relay the conversation to James and Sarah. Neither fully believes Callahan's assurances, but for the moment, the immediate threat appears to have passed. What now? Sarah asks, returning her attention to the monitoring equipment. Renaissance will continue spreading. Within years, possibly the entire human population will carry the enhancement. We monitor, I decide. We study. We prepare for whatever comes next. And we make sure the truth is known about Prometheus, about Victoria, about Renaissance. No more secrets. In the days and weeks that follow, the world begins to change. Subtly at first, then with increasing momentum. Enhanced cognitive abilities lead to breakthroughs in science, medicine, technology. The Renaissance pathogen continues to spread through close human contact, exactly as Victoria designed, a benevolent contagion transforming humanity one person at a time. I established the Victoria Montgomery Foundation for Evolutionary Studies, named not to honor my daughter's methods, but to acknowledge the reality she created and our responsibility to understand it. Sarah Chun leads the research team, studying Renaissance's long-term effects and implications. 1 year after the activation, I stand again at Victoria's tomb, alone this time. The hidden server room remains sealed, a time capsule of sorts, preserving the original protocol should future generations need to understand their origins. You wanted to play God. I tell the cold marble bearing my daughter's name, to decide who is worthy of the future and who should be left behind. But in the end, it wasn't your decision to make. Not yours alone. I place white roses on her tomb, as I do each month, not in celebration of what she created, but in mourning for what she became, and for the daughter I lost long before her death. The world is changing, Victoria. Humanity is evolving, just as you planned. But not through culling or control, through universal enhancement, through the potential you discovered but couldn't properly value. I touch the marble briefly. Your legacy is transformed, just as humanity is being transformed. I hope, wherever you are, you can appreciate the irony. As I leave the mausoleum, the autumn sunlight breaks through clouds, illuminating the family name carved above the entrance, Montgomery. Once it stood for wealth and power, then for corruption and near catastrophe, now perhaps for redemption and renewal. James waits by the car, patient as always. In the year since Renaissance activated, our relationship has deepened beyond professional collaboration or shared trauma. Not romance, exactly, but something equally profound. Two people who faced the end of the world together and somehow found a way forward. Ready? He asks as I approach. I take one last look at the mausoleum, at the physical reminder of all I've lost and all that's been irreversibly changed. Then I turn to James, to the future, whatever it might hold. Ready, I confirm, and step into the light.